Attached Secretariat will be called to speak and will be reminded of their allotted speaking time. Please keep an eye on the screens in the chamber where the current speaker and the next three speakers will be displayed. The normal rules regarding blue cards and catch the eye procedure will apply. So we start by inviting the Deputy Minister for European Affairs representing the Council Presidency, Marilena Rauna.
Metsola, President von der Leyen, honourable members, thank you for this joint debate. Allow me to go through the very full and important agenda of the upcoming European Council before turning to the rapidly evolving situation in the wider Middle East, particularly developments concerning Iran. On Thursday, leaders will meet in Brussels for the spring meeting of the European Council. As always, the meeting will begin with an exchange with the President of the European Parliament, and after that, leaders are expected to hear from President Zelensky. The Spring European Council traditionally focuses on economic matters, and this time leaders will address competitiveness, the deepening and integrating of our single market, and the multi-annual financial framework. In light of the rapidly evolving geopolitical environment, leaders will also discuss the situation in Ukraine and in the wider Middle East. Let me begin with competitiveness. At the informal retreat in Altenbissen on the 12th of February, leaders reflected on how to further deepen our single market, reduce strategic dependencies, and boost Europe's competitiveness. These priorities are also central to the work of the Cyprus presidency. Leaders shared a strong sense of urgency and are expected to follow up on these reflections at the upcoming European Council. Their discussions will be informed by the Commission's forthcoming roadmap, One Europe, One Market, aimed at strengthening Europe's competitiveness and strategic autonomy by fully unlocking the potential of the single market by 2027. With clear targets, with a clear roadmap and timelines. Europe does not lack talent, ideas, or entrepreneurship. Quite the contrary. What Europe must remove are the barriers that hold back the full potential of our single market. In this context, leaders are expected to focus on removing remaining barriers to the four freedoms, simplifying rules for businesses, and enabling European companies, including startups and SMEs, the backbone of our economies, to scale up more easily across the single market. This includes advancing initiatives such as the 28th company law regime to facilitate cross-border activity. Leaders are also expected to focus on affordable energy and accelerating the Energy Union 2030 agenda, fostering innovation and investment, including through further progress towards a savings and investment union. A more competitive union also requires a budget that is fit for the future. Leaders will therefore turn their attention to the new multi-annual financial framework. The aim of this exchange will be to guide the work ahead and allow us, as the presidency, to advance preparations for a negotiating package with indicative figures by June 2026. Three main aspects are expected to be the focus of this discussion: the EU budget contribution to boost EU competitiveness, the funding gap between our ambition and the resources available, and the proposed new governance framework. Other important issues will also be addressed by the European Council. Leaders will take stock of ongoing efforts to strengthen European defence and security, notably with a view to achieving the Union's 2030 defence readiness objective. Migration will also be discussed, with leaders reviewing progress in the implementation of the various work strands agreed. At the same time, in the current deteriorating geopolitical environment, it will be essential to reaffirm the European Union's unwavering support for Ukraine, which remains a top priority. In this context, leaders will exchange views with President Zelensky and continue their discussions on how the Union can sustain its support for Ukraine at all levels. Presidents, honorable members, turning now to the rapidly evolving, deeply concerning situation in the wider Middle East. Leaders will be joined by the UN Secretary General for a discussion on the geopolitical situation and multilateralism. Following the recent developments in Iran, the EU has reaffirmed its steadfast commitment to safeguarding regional security and stability. We have called for maximum restraint, the protection of civilians, and full respect for international law, the UN Charter, and international humanitarian law. Let us be absolutely clear. The situation in Iran and the broader Middle East is extremely serious. This new cycle of attacks and counterattacks threaten gravely regional stability and global security. For Cyprus, this situation is not abstract. Our geography links us directly to the region, and it links Europe to this region. From our corner of the Union, at the southeastern frontier, it is absolutely clear what is at stake. While Cyprus was not directly a target, the recent drone incident involving the British bases illustrates how unpredictable this conflict is and how quickly and indiscriminately it can spread. Allow me to take this opportunity to express Cyprus's sincere appreciation for the strong solidarity and support to Cyprus and its people extended by the EU institutions, including this House and its President, by the President of the European Commission and the European Council. I would also like, from this podium, to thank those member states that have responded swiftly and with tangible support to strengthen Cyprus's defensive capacities in the face of evolving threats: Greece, France, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands. Cyprus and its people will never forget. This is European unity and solidarity in action, a message that the security of a member state is the security of the whole European Union, that when one member state is attacked, the whole European Union is attacked, and an example of European autonomy. And you've made one thing clear: Cyprus is not Europe's periphery. It is Europe's front line and its lighthouse in the Eastern Mediterranean. From the outset, I wish to unequivocally condemn the unjustifiable and indiscriminate Iranian attacks against our partners and underscore our full solidarity with our friends. We reiterate our call on Iran to immediately cease its unjustified military strikes against our regional partners. These actions violate their sovereignty and risk further destabilization. The European Union, since day one, is in constant contact with our partners in the region. President von der Leyen, President Costa convened a meeting with regional leaders to assess the situation after a joint meeting with GCC countries at foreign ministers level, where ministers reaffirmed their unwavering commitment to dialogue and diplomacy as the means to resolve this crisis. At the same time, we must turn our attention to the global implications of this crisis. The events unfolding in the region also risk disrupting international trade and supply routes, notably for energy, with potential consequences for our shared economic and security interests. Safeguarding regional airspace, freedom of navigation and maritime routes, including through the Strait of Hormuz and Bab el-Mandeb, remains essential, while ensuring energy security. We also recall the important role of the EU's maritime defensive operations, Aspides and Atalanta, which contribute to protecting critical waterways and preventing disruptions to vital supply lines. We are also deeply concerned about the impact of the regional crisis in our neighboring Lebanon, which is already experiencing dramatic humanitarian consequences, including large-scale displacements. Violence against civilians and attack on civilian infrastructures are unacceptable. We underscore the need for the protection of civilians and the respect for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Lebanon. And we welcome the Lebanese government's decision on the 2nd of March to prohibit any military or security activity by Hezbollah and the government's intention to implement this decisively. Cyprus and indeed the European Union have long supported the Lebanese armed forces. It is important that we continue and step up our support to Lebanon. Diplomacy is the way forward. Further escalation will only further destabilize the region, with its consequences expanding well beyond the Middle East. Another key priority for all of us is the safety of EU citizens in the region. The Union and its member states are taking all necessary steps, including through EU consular coordination mechanisms, to ensure their protection. More than 1.3 million EU citizens reside or are registered in the affected region. At present, 19 member states have activated the EU Civil Protection Mechanism to support assisted departures and evacuation operations. In this context, I would like to express our deep appreciation to our Gulf partners for their assistance and cooperation in ensuring the safety of EU citizens during evacuation and repatriation efforts. Despite being attacked, the Gulf countries stepped up as reliable partners. In difficult moments such as these, solidarity and close cooperation among partners, among friends, is essential. Cyprus has activated all contingency plans and stands ready to support humanitarian operations, as it has done in each and every crisis in the region, to assist European and third country nationals and to host coordination personnel if required. We remain committed to contributing constructively, including through our consistent role as a humanitarian hub, always part of the solution. Presidents, honourable members, the European Union is firmly committed to revive a diplomatic path to end this crisis. As presidency, Cyprus will continue to closely monitor developments. It will continue working in close cooperation with member states, the European Parliament, the Commission, and our regional and international partners to support de-escalation, promote diplomatic solutions, contribute to regional stability, and protect EU interests. Only a sustainable diplomatic solution will allow us to address decisively our multiple, long-standing concerns related to Iran. This includes preventing Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon, curbing its ballistic missiles and drones program, and ending its destabilizing activities in the region. These objectives remain essential. As Presidency of the Council, we will continue to facilitate the Union's collective efforts to safeguard its security and interests, including through sanctions. At the same time, we must not lose sight of the dire situation in Gaza. The European Council will address the need for the implementation of the ceasefire and UN Security Resolution 2803, and the EU's readiness to work on the implementation of the comprehensive peace plan to end the Gaza conflict, fully in line with the UN Security Council resolution. We cannot ignore the broader interconnections between regional crises. Iran has long supplied Russia with Shahed drones, which have been used extensively to strike Ukrainian cities and civilian infrastructure. After years of defending itself against those drone attacks, Ukraine has developed considerable expertise. Kiev has already offered to share this expertise. This again illustrates how interconnected today's security challenges have become. And in this complex environment, the European Union must remain united, principled, and engaged. Allow me to conclude with one final point. The Cyprus presidency continues its work as planned. Where necessary, adjustments have been made. There is normalcy in Cyprus. A presidency that in difficult circumstances continues producing. A presidency with an emphasis on the region of the wider Middle East and the Gulf, with an emphasis on maritime security, all pertinent, all relevant. And even more determined as presidency and committed to fulfilling our institutional responsibilities and advancing our union's agenda in a focused and results-driven manner, always committed to Cyprus's humanitarian role, to being an enabler of dialogue and diplomacy, always part of the solution, never part of the problem. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Rauna. Now I give the floor to the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen.
Madam President, dear Roberta, Deputy Minister Rauna, dear Marilena, honourable members, let me start with the ongoing situation in the Middle East. For decades, Ayatollah Khamenei ruled through repression, violence, and fear. Under his rule, Iranians lived under a system that silenced dissent and crushed basic freedoms. Earlier this year, hundreds of thousands of young Iranians took to the streets to demand a better future. They were met with brutal repression. More than 17,000 young men and women were killed as the regime clung to power. But the crimes of this regime go back decades. It imprisoned and tortured its own citizens. It sponsored terrorism across the region and even on European soil. And it provided crucial support to Russia's brutal war against Ukraine. There should be no tears shed for such a regime. Many Iranians have celebrated Khamenei's downfall. They hope that this moment can open a path towards a free Iran. That is what the Iranian people deserve: freedom, dignity, and the right to decide their own future. But allow me to make one important point. Seeing the world as it is in no way diminishes our determination to fight for the world as we want it. The European Union was founded as a peace project. Our unwavering commitment to the pursuit of peace, to the principles of the UN Charter, and to international law are as central today as they were at our creation, and we will always uphold these principles. Honourable members, Europe's first responsibility is to protect our citizens and to prepare for the impacts of this conflict. And, Deputy Minister, dear Marilena, I want also to be very clear. All of us stand here in full solidarity with Cyprus. Your security is our security. Honourable members, we are also seeing the impact of the situation in the Middle East on energy. Thanks to the actions we have taken in the recent years, Europe is now far less exposed to fossil fuels imports. Our diversification efforts are paying off, but this does not mean that we are immune to price shocks. Energy markets are global. Disruptions in the Gulf quickly affect prices everywhere. We are already seeing price spikes, and this is why the G7 energy ministers met yesterday, to be followed by a video call by G7 leaders. But no matter what we do in terms of measures, as long as we import a significant share of fossil fuels from unstable regions, we are vulnerable and we are dependent. And this energy always comes at a cost. I want to give you just an example. Since the beginning of this conflict, gas prices have risen by 50% and oil prices have risen by 27%. If you translate this in euros, the 10 days of war have already cost European taxpayers an additional 3 billion euros in fossil fuel imports, additional. That is the price of our dependence. And honourable members, fact is, we have energy sources that are homegrown, renewables and nuclear. Their prices have remained the same over the last 10 days. Yet in current crisis, some argue that we should abandon our long-term strategy and even go back to Russian fossil fuels. This would be a strategic blunder. It would make us more dependent, more vulnerable and weaker. So we should stay the course of our long-term strategy. We can be more pragmatic, we can be smart in its implementation, no question, but the direction of travel is the right one. Now, where do we stand today? Households and companies face pressure now, so we must deliver relief now. And we must comprehensively look at how we can reduce people's energy bills. Not only looking at one component, but rather at all 4 components of the price. That is, the cost of the energy itself, which makes more or less 56% on average of the bill, grid charges on average 18%, taxes and levies 15%, and carbon costs on average around 11%. As I said, of course, these are averages and they differ depending on the energy mix in the respective member state. Now, on the cost of energy, on the market design. Overall, the current market design has delivered. And there is overall support for the current system. But it is crucial that we reduce the cost impact when gas sets the electricity price. Therefore, we are preparing different options, better use of power purchase agreements and contracts for difference, state aid measures, and we are exploring subsidizing or even capping the gas price. Second, on the grid charges, that is a delicate matter because on one hand, these charges are needed to invest in more and smarter grids, and on the other hand, there's room to increase the productivity of grids so that less renewables are wasted. And here I want to give you one figure that is telling. Last year, we installed more than 80 gigawatts of renewables in the European Union, a record. So far, so good. But 6 times more renewable energy does not get access to the grids. So if we produced 6 times more renewables, that was wasted. With electricity demand set to increase, this is simply not sustainable. My third point on taxes and levy, this is of course a national competence. I fully respect that. But it is also true that some member states are taxing electricity much higher even than gas. To give you another example, one member state applies 0% taxes, 0, on retail electricity, while some others apply over 16%. That makes a difference. So there is room for action, and as I said, it is a national competence. Finally, the fourth component on ETS. Also on ETS, let me give you one figure. Without ETS, we would now consume 100 billion cubic meter more gas, again making us more vulnerable, more dependent and weaker. So we need ETS, but we need to modernize it. And I look forward to continuing this debate on all these elements with you here in the European Parliament. Honourable members, let me finish on another aspect of competitiveness. It is one thing that we actually agree on components of competitiveness, that's good, but it's another thing that we deliver on the action and the legislation. And this is why we will soon present a roadmap for One Europe, One Market. The purpose of this roadmap is that we set out key legislative measures that we must adopt with clear timelines, clear targets, to deliver them by the end of 2027. We want to be done and completed with the work by the end of 2027 for One Europe, One Market. And I say that explicitly because we all know by experience only what gets measured gets done. So the roadmap contains various packages of legislation. It's also very important. Savings and investment union, all the topics of energy I was just touching upon, quality jobs, AI, gigafactories, the 28th regime. You just name it, these are only a few. My point is that I would like all three institutions, Parliament, Council and Commission, to sign up for it. We know the challenges, we know what must be done, now we must deliver for European citizens. Thank you and long live Europe.
Thank you very much. Now we go to the speakers for the political groups, starting with the EPP group, Jeroen Lenners.
Thank you, Madam President, dear Commission President, dear Deputy Minister. Iran's crisis did not begin on the 28th of February. It began much earlier when this cruel and oppressive regime chose to wage war on its own people, when young protesters were shot in the streets, where women demanding freedom were beaten. So yes, we stand with the Iranian people. For years, the international community hoped that diplomacy would do the trick, and Europe tried diplomacy. We signed the nuclear deal, yet the regime continued building missile capabilities for reaching Athens, Bucharest and Sofia. We imposed sanctions, but Iran continued sponsoring terrorism, destabilizing the Middle East. The nuclear threat remains, and Iran delivers the weapons that Russia uses to attack Ukraine. So let's be honest, and I repeat this, the world is better off without this regime. And for the first time in decades, there might be a real possibility for change. But it's also risky. Military intervention without clear objectives or an exit strategy has the danger of instability, humanitarian suffering and regional escalation. And it's of paramount importance that this conflict does not turn into a full-blown regional war. And we call on all parties to exercise maximum restraint, to protect civilians and to fully respect international law. But this crisis also tells us something about Europe. Iranian drones reached Cyprus. That means this conflict, as the Deputy Minister said, is no longer distant. It has already touched on European soil. And when Europe's security is at stake, Europe must act together. At this time, Cyprus did not invoke Article 42, paragraph 7. But imagine if a member state does. Solidarity cannot be improvised in the middle of a crisis. If a member state is attacked, Europe needs to know how it responds. We have the nuclear umbrella that France provides and that strengthens our European deterrence. But we must also build common capabilities, drones, cyber brigade, missile shield, and ultimately a true European defence union. But strength also does not come only from capabilities. Security also means speaking with one voice. Europe was not consulted on Ukraine's peace talks. We were not there on Venezuela and not on Iran. Why? Because a Europe with 27 different voices is not taken seriously. When Prime Minister Sanchez weakens NATO, or when Viktor Orban breaks our common line on Ukraine, we show Washington and Beijing a simple message. When Europe is divided, Europe can be ignored. And the next European Council must begin building real European security, starting with the 90 billion we promised for Ukraine's defense. Europe's security cannot become a tool in someone's domestic election campaign. Viktor Orban is failing Hungarian citizens on healthcare, on education, on the economy, and now he's trying to distract from those failures with a disinformation campaign that undermines Europe's unity and our security. Enough is enough. And, dear colleagues, strength also means economic strength. In a world in turmoil, only a competitive Europe can secure our prosperity. That is what the EPP campaigned on, and that is what we are delivering. We are simplifying rules, cutting red tape, strengthening trade partnerships and deepening the single market. And this has already saved European companies billions of euros. But the work is not finished. We must go further and we must go faster. And the consequences of the war in Iran are already visible in our member states. Energy prices are rising again, putting pressure on households and businesses across the European Union. And if geopolitical tensions drive up energy costs for Europeans, the European Council cannot stay silent. We expect clear discussions and concrete action. Our citizens expect leadership. They will not accept politics that merely describe the chaos. They want us to fix it. As De Gasperi once said, politics is about making things happen, whether in good weather or bad. And today, we are facing difficult weather. And when some in European politics choose procedural nitpicking and institutional turf wars, we choose leadership. Not hesitation, not excuses, leadership. To build a Europe that protects its people and protects our prosperity. Let's deliver. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lenas. Now the chair of the S&D Group, Irache Garcia Perez.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you very much, President. No to war, yes to international law. That is the feeling of a large part of European citizens. And you, Mrs. von der Leyen, have said that Europe cannot be a custodian of the old world order. But the problem is not whether the world order is old or new. The problem is who you allow to violate this order. When Europe responds with complacency, appeasement, what it's doing is opening the door to autocrats like Trump and Netanyahu, and they're allowed to trample all over it without consequences. Your responsibility is not to declare the international order obsolete. Your responsibility is to defend it, is to demand compliance with these norms, to stand up to these autocrats with facts. You're standing up to Trump if you use the anti-coercion instrument when the EU is threatened with tariffs. You stand up to Netanyahu when you put sanctions in place when genocide is committed. You're standing up for the Green Deal because renewable energies will free us from the gas and oil from the most cruel tyrannies. Mrs. von der Leyen, you justified the attack against Iran, saying that we shouldn't cry for the Iranian regime. You're right. No Democrat is crying for the dictatorship of the Ayatollahs, a regime that brutally repressed its people, particularly women, and who destabilized the whole region for decades. That's why we were putting in sanctions in place against this government, and we were going to do that to suffocate the dictatorship. But it's one thing to not cry for the regime, but it's another thing to stay silent in the face of the death of innocents. Because many of us do feel a lot of sorry for the 150 girls who were killed in a school in Minab by US bombs. We feel sorry for the 500 civilians killed in Lebanon by Israeli attacks. We feel sorry because all of these lives have the same value. And that is why we need to speak clearly. The military attack of Israel and the US against Iran violates the Charter of the United Nations. If we accept that major powers can bomb whenever they want, then international law ceases to exist and we end up with the law of the jungle. This war is already affecting our companies, our workers. The price of oil and petrol have shot up again, and it is unacceptable just to look to the other side, ignore the facts. We're talking about a potential migratory crisis. And let me say, Mr. Weber, the truth, you have called for the EU to speak with a single voice when it comes to foreign policy, and I completely agree with you. But we have to actually do this in practice, and it starts by saying the most fundamental truths. You have to speak out against the violation of the Charter of the United Nations. I think it's right to call for unity, as the European Council has done, and to show solidarity when a country of the EU is attacked. And you had an opportunity to stand by Spain's side when the Conference of Presidents, we tabled a motion to talk about this, but instead of standing up for Spain, you sided with the far right instead of showing a message of unity and solidarity with a country of the EU. That is how you show your solidarity. The European Union was meant to be something different. It wasn't the law of the most powerful. It was the rule of law. And that is the principle that we have to defend today against these autocrats. This is the principle that needs to guide the voice of the European Union in our world. Peace, justice, and dignity for all peoples. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to the chair of the PFP group, Jordan Bardella.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, President. President von der Leyen, dear colleagues, if we take a look at the military operation that's being carried out by Israel and the United States of America against the terrorist regime of Iran, this has plunged the Middle East into a new period of instability. The mullahs regime has seized their regime based on terror, partially, but this has always repressed the people who were looking forward to a better future. They've also sponsored terrorism in the Middle East and around the world. France itself can recall the scars that were left by the assassination of 58 paratroopers in 1983 during the attack on Raqqa when they were killed. France has a responsibility, especially if you follow the thread of history. The idea is to work towards de-escalation, protect stability in the region, and France has to protect its interests and those of its allies. We are thinking of the people of Lebanon who are also being dragged into this war by Hezbollah, which is not only an adversary of Israel, but the worst enemy of the people of Lebanon themselves. And we think of Lebanon's sovereignty, its territorial integrity. We have to try and help them get rid of Hezbollah and also look at the aspect of security. We know that the Middle Eastern region is the lung of the supply of energy of the rest of the world. We've seen what has happened to the price of oil, gas, fertilizers, which have all been penalized from Europe by the carbon tax. We've seen that the price of petrol at the pump is going to go up. What about farmers, entrepreneurs, craftsmen? They're all very worried. It is not acceptable that governments enrich themselves on the backs of people who are suffering in the crisis. So we have to bring down energy taxes. And each member state should be allowed to go back to their own energy sovereignty and do away with the ridiculous European laws that fix energy tariffs. France, for example, when it comes to families and entrepreneurs, we should be able to have cheaper electricity. So let's act before it's too late.
Adesso do la parola al presidente del gruppo ICR.
President of the ECR Group now, Nicola Procaccini, please. Thank you, President von der Leyen. The external power of the European Union is crucial for its internal stability. Support for the people of Ukraine should quite rightly remain at the heart of our international commitments, because the resistance of Kiev is the key that protects the idea of Europe in terms of both its traditional and modern values. Iran, as we all know, is not Europe. Nevertheless, the men and women and young people who look to the skies of Tehran with a blend of hope and understandable fear hold the same desire for freedom. I think that the Union of European States should act in a clear-sighted and pragmatic manner, basing ourselves on developments in the Middle East. I think we have absolutely to show solidarity with Cyprus, and I think the Union must also manage the economic consequences that are already weighing on member states in a decisive manner. Expensive fuel and peaking energy prices are the consequences of a war that has already brought its consequences here. And defending the economic health of families and businesses is a priority that our group has always called for, and we think it's even more important now. The increases caused by the ETS were debatable when proposed by the radical environmentalists, and not reviewing that tax today would be a major error. Yesterday we heard the Commissioner for Energy presenting a proposal that in general we appreciate, but obviously arrives too late and risks remaining dead in the water if we don't act immediately and turn it into reality. The key to economic and political stability is energy sovereignty, i.e. our ability to produce energy from all available sources, fossil fuels and renewables, with all the technology we have available, including nuclear. If we continue to depend on others when it comes to energy and critical raw materials, we will be neither free, nor prosperous, nor safe. Thank you.
Now I give the floor to the President of the Renew Europe Group, Valérie Hayet.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Madame la
Thank you very much, Madam Ministers. We do not mourn the Ayatollah regime and their nuclear aspirations. We hope for a better future for the Iranian people and the brave Iranian women. Everybody wants peace in the Middle East, but we are not there yet because we have a war waged by Israel and the US with extremely concerning consequences for the Iranian people, for the region, and for Europeans. The Iranian regime has not fallen yet, and it retaliates. It bombards our allies and has even attacked Cyprus, an EU member state. Madam Minister, you have our profound solidarity. The EU has been mobilized since the beginning of this war. It acts to help the member states with security in the region and Cyprus as well, sending military material, trying to end the blockade in the Hormuz Straits as part of international mission. We are helping our citizens as well. The EU acts, but it does not have the geopolitical influence it should. Yes, we want to play a mediating role, but we cannot simply take whatever Donald Trump leaves us to have. We know what will happen. The US will stop bombing at some point, and then the diplomatic work will fall to us. And that's what happened to us after the 12-day war last year. Dear colleagues, I will not be the subcontractor for the United States. Europe needs to be respected. It needs to reaffirm its commitment to international law. It's not a naive thing to say. The question is simple. What is in our interests? Is it might is right, or is it a rules-based international law system? Once the bombing has stopped, we need to be calling for rule of law and defense of international law. But you cannot decree respect for yourself. We need to speak the language of the powerful if we really want to hold influence. If we want to have weight in the world, if we want to be listened to, we need to become the #1 economic and trade power in the world again. This war has emphasized what? It has showed us how much we're dependent on fossil fuels. Yes, we are right to put in place the Green Deal. We should accelerate those ambitions. It's not just climate, it's our energy autonomy, the bills for our companies, for our citizens, it's our competitiveness. What we need to do is to end these aberrations that are such obstacles for us. We have to complete our single market. You have a work program, I know, Madam President, but we are losing huge amounts of money in terms of growth each year. There are so many institutional barriers. We need to end this animosity. It saps our credibility on the international stage. And we see this with Viktor Orban's unacceptable blackmail over Ukraine. Madam President, what the world is facing today is a disappearing world order inherited from the Second World War. And we need to rebuild that, but a system that's still based on international law and in our interest, because at the heart of our project is rule of law, defense of our freedoms, and Europe needs to lead that. Thank you.
Floor now to the co-president of the Green Group, Terry Reintke.
Thank you, Madam President, Madam Commission President, Madam Minister. Dear colleagues, these last days our thoughts have been with the people in Iran and the Middle East. After fighting with such courage against a brutal mullah regime, killing thousands, their hopes for change are now caught in a storm of war. Their protection and their security has to be at the center of Europe's response to this crisis. Yes, guided by international law, not by a logic of further escalation. And colleagues, Europe united must mean that democratic leaders in Europe stand together. And when one of them is being attacked, especially by the likes of Trump, we all stand behind them. So I also must say I was really shocked that EPP prevented a clear declaration of solidarity with Pedro Sanchez. What we need now is unity across political lines amongst Democrats. Only that will make Europe strong. Colleagues, the escalation of the crisis in the Middle East is already impacting European citizens as we speak. Again, we see fossil energy markets are highly volatile, and Europe is too dependent. When Trump starts another war, European consumers pay the price. And maybe the far-right cheerleaders of Donald Trump would like to explain that to European citizens, why now their gas and heating bills are going up. The European response, however, has to be clear. In short term, we have to tax windfall profits for example, oil companies, and we need to provide household support for those most in need. But in the long term, colleagues, we need a plan how to get out of our fossil dependencies. And maybe, Commission President, you can help me on this, but I remember that we were actually on track of getting there, that we were working on this plan. And I think if I remember correctly, it was called the Green Deal. We were on course for decarbonizing and making the European Union more independent. And this is the course that we need to stay on. Instead of attacking the Green Deal continuously, we have to work together to make it possible. It is time to wake up and say yes to renewable freedom. This is what we need to do at this stage, and this is what Europe needs for climate, for security, and for freedom. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to the co-president of the Left Group, Manon Aubry.
Merci, Madame. Yes, thank you very much, President, Minister, Mrs. von der Leyen. Mrs. von der Leyen, I've come along here with a very simple but essential slogan, no to war. And to those who propagate it, if you take a look at the war being waged by the United States and Iran in Iran and Lebanon, it's fully illegal under international law, especially when we knew that the negotiations on the nuclear aspects were coming to their close. and Iran probably going to end their enrichment program. Who really seriously thinks that you can install democracy with bombs? Have you not learnt anything from Iraq and Afghanistan? These bombs kill blindly, for example, like the Minab school, with over 100 young Iranians being killed. Very often it's the civil populations who are the victims. And 750,000 people and very many children have had to flee to survive, because the objective of Benjamin Netanyahu is to turn Beirut into the new Gaza, and this in Lebanon. And this because you, Mrs. von der Leyen, have been incapable of halting him in what he's doing in Palestine. So he's doing it all over again. Mr. Bardella has talked about the situation in Iran, but you're on the side of the executioners, Mr. Netanyahu and Mr. Trump. So no to war and imperialist objectives. And we've seen that the leaders of the United States and Israel, the battle is elsewhere. Take a look at the Strait of Hormuz. We know that Trump is focusing on these aspects of what's going on in the world to evade the Epstein files. The far right, the Israeli far right, is continuing with its colonialist genocide projects in Israel. The Golan Heights yesterday and now Lebanon, they're filling it with white phosphorus through their bombs. So no to war and no to European complicity. Europe has to stand side by side with the people, the citizens, and Europe has to finally break the association agreement with Israel and that with Trump. And instead of that, Mrs. von der Leyen, you're incapable of defending international law. You're not condemning what's going on. You're encouraging it. And no word for the victims of this these fascist actions. Is this because of cowardice or something else? So do not count on us to continue supporting you here. No to war. Do not feel that this, or believe that this war is not without consequences for the European people. We've seen that oil and gas prices are going up at the petrol pump. No to the war, block the prices. Croatia has already done this, so what are you waiting for? Dear colleagues, Europe is facing a historical choice, war or peace. Spain has already shown the path that we should follow by refusing the war. Let's follow them and defend the international law in the face of brutal violence. No to war, as Albert Camus said. Peace is the only conflict that is worth waging war over. So we want to go back to the rules-based order in the face of what's going on. So make your choice, Mrs. von der Leyen.
Same group to Roberto Vannacci.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Mrs. von der Leyen, what an honour to have you here. We don't see you all that often. I quite honestly imagined that you'd be on the phone with Trump trying to decide the outcome of the war. But actually it was Putin who was on the phone to Trump. During this war, you've done absolutely nothing so far, Mrs. von der Leyen. You said that you were concerned. Now, clearly it's not Mrs. von der Leyen who talks about this kind of thing, but some people are irresponsibly applauding this war because they're talking about exporting democracy. But Europe, as a result of this war, has fallen into an even greater crisis. So let's ditch the Green Deal, let's reopen the oil, gas and fertilizer taps from Russia, and let's act in our own interests, because those who launched and are running this war are looking after their own interests, and you just simply have no contact with them.
1.5 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, 2 years ago, right here in this hemicycle, Donald Tusk met journalists, and he said at that time that we're living in a pre-war era. Some people thought that his words were a bit too tough, a bit too strong, but that is our reality. We are living in a pre-war period, and as Europeans, we have to try and provide security and a solution out of this. Obviously, we've seen that the conflict in the Middle Eastern region is spreading to other countries. But I think as Europe and Europeans, we should draw three conclusions. Firstly, we have to take a look at our continent. We already have war on our continent. Ukraine needs further support, arms, ammunition, particularly now, so that we can end this war as quickly as possible, so that we can bring war to an end on our continent. The Russians cannot benefit from the situation in the Middle East, i.e. where all eyes are turned towards the Middle East. Secondly, we have the SAFE programme, and this should be broadened, expanded, so that we include not only the production of ammunition and missiles, deterrent systems. We need to be safe and secure. We need to be able to protect ourselves against new systems, and we should ramp up our production, install these systems not only on the eastern flank but elsewhere, because if we take a look at the attack on the base in Cyprus, this just goes to show that all Europe must be protected. We all have to feel safe. And then thirdly, then there's the thread proposed by President Macron and a nuclear arsenal. All of us have to feel safe in Europe, and we have to base ourselves on European solidarity. And that means that all of us have to be able to have deterrence measures guaranteed, so that Europe is only strong when we work together.
Now I give the floor to Yannis Maniatis. 1 minute.
Dear President Ms. von der Leyen, yesterday you presented your proposal for a new foreign policy doctrine for the EU. Let me say from the outset that it is unacceptable even to imply that the EU could move away from the international law and international legality as its basis. Of course, that does not mean that we cannot name things as they are. We need to condemn the violations of international law, like it happens in Iran. We need to protect our member states, like in Cyprus, where Greece, Italy, Spain, France are showing solidarity in action. We need to forward the European values and not just the...
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. Let me now give the floor to Mr. Tanja Correa, please. President, Commissioners, Minister. I apologise for my irreverence, but this session basically reminds me of this well-known piece of music, Parole, parole, parole. Everyone's talking as though everything was roses. But it's not. Many things are changing, but we're not. What do I mean by that? Well, what I'm saying is that we need to adapt our positions and policies to the changes we're seeing happen. The fact is that Volkswagen is going to be dismissing 5,000 workers very soon, and other businesses will be doing exactly the same. And the reason is our internal legislation. It's the lack of vision that we have. It's the fault of our long-term policies. We only think about renewables. We don't think about people. The future depends on us. We have an important role to play in the future of our citizens, and that's what we should be focusing on. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me now give the floor to Mr. Yaki. 2 minutes, please.
No worries. Take your time.
Yes, thank you very much, President. Listening to some of the comments that have been made here this morning, I sort of feel that people are ignoring a fact. What is Iran? Those who are criticizing the United States. Obviously, there are values that we want to protect from here. Iran, mass killing of protesters since the bloody November, when we know that weapons were turned on protesters, and this is one of the largest massacres of demonstrators And then we know, of course, that there was the young Iranian woman who was killed by the moral police, and lots of people protested then. They were killed, 2,000 killed, lots of people injured as well. And there were nearly 10,000 executions last year. A lot of people were accused of not believing God. People were arrested, executed, and there were even minors who were executed who didn't agree with the regime. And we know, of course, that also a few years ago, very many other people were executed and tortured using electroshock. And then women who've been arrested and tortured, arrested by the moral police. Iran also finances Russia, drones, everything that's killing people in Ukraine. So I'm not going to shed tears for Iran, and I would urge you to do the same. Finally, the cost of energy. There's absolutely no justification today, on the eve of Easter, to do something about ETS. The only thing we should do is suspend it, because it is we've got some of the most expensive energy, and between the time it was introduced till now, energy has gone up 80%. So I think the only thing we should be saying is stop ETS.
Mr. Keller, please.
Nobody will shed tears for the mad theocracy and brutal dictatorship that is the Iranian regime. And we sincerely hope that it would fall immediately and that the people of Iran would be able to decide its future. But we are at a crossroads here in terms of a number of things from the European perspective. First and foremost, are we going to acquiesce to the abandonment of multilateralism and international rules-based order? Because we are a rules-based order here in the European Union, and we claim to live by the UN Charter and international law. It is clearly evident that what is happening in the Middle East is not within the confines of the UN Charter. So at least be honest with ourselves. We either are going to accept the international rules-based order and defend it, or else we're going to abandon it. President Trump has acted unilaterally on a number of occasions. From the point of view of the European Union, we've had a situation with regard to an attack on the sovereignty of a member state in terms of Denmark. We've had a situation where we've had on-off support for Ukraine from President Trump. This is a war that's at our front in the Eastern Front, and simply we are the ones that will be faced with either the success or failure of Ukraine, and equally in the context of the Middle East, it will be Europe that will be the ones that will be most likely affected. We've already seen an attack on Cyprus itself. The displacement of people. If the displacement of people starts from the Middle East, they will end up in Europe. And these are the real questions that we have to ask ourselves when we are talking about the UN Charter, multilateralism, and the respect for international law. Clearly, I believe that this particular war in the Middle East is not within those confines.
Grazie, onorevole Ribaigi.
Thank you, Mrs. Ribaigina, please.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you very much, President, Commission, Council. The attack against Iran may ensnare Europe into an illegal war. It is against international law. It is a war we do not want or need. Neither does Iran or the Middle East. The war makes us poorer, there's higher prices, more instability. And this war militarily makes us more vulnerable. It opens up a new front on an existing war against Russia. And in humanitarian terms, leads to more suffering. And the Iranian people are forced into being adversaries or exiles. This is repeating the destiny of Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. Mrs. von der Leyen, being brave means not going to war, standing up to Trump, saying that Europe defends itself from Brussels and not Washington. Thank you.
A blue card for you from Mr. Oliveira. Okay, please.
Espera. One moment.
Just take your time, no worries. It's okay now? Okay, please.
Obrigado, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Mrs. Ribeigina, were you referred to previous wars in the Middle East, wars carried out by the US against Iraq, Syria, Yemen, etc. And the question is, we've got this whole series of wars that have destabilized the Middle East when the US was directly involved. Isn't it time for the President of the Commission to criticize this US attack on Iran rather than making a speech as she did today, which was looking to find reasons why the EU should continue to be subservient to the United States?
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I think, as was clearly said in the speech, Europe has to be stronger, has to strengthen international law. This war, we have seen from the very first moment, is an illegal war. Europe needs to decide where it stands. We need a Europe that defends international law, that decides on its place in the world, and once again, not stand on the side of the interests of Washington, but the interests of European citizens. Thank you.
Onorevole Botenga, prego.
Most of you don't condemn, even support Trump's and Netanyahu's war on Iran, yet claim to stand with the Iranian people. Now I dare you to say that to the eyes of that 7-year-old girl, her backpack still beside her desk, that was killed when a US Tomahawk missile hit her elementary school. Dare to admit to the 167 other victims in that school that you are offering European bases to US killing machines. Tell the families of Tehran, a city of 10 million people, that you support the chemical warfare of Israel as they poison the air with toxic fires and black rain that will cause cancers for decades. Tell the Iranian people how much you really love them, while from Golestan to Chehel Sotun, Western bombs damage century-old cultural heritage. Afghanistan, Libya, Syria, Iraq, your bombs never brought democracy and never will. They bring chaos, death, destruction, and the unbearable silence of children who will never come home.
Grazie, onorevole Urik.
Thank you. Mr. Ulrich now, please.
Ms. von der Leyen, Mr. Šefčovič, after the attack of the US and Israel on Iran, I only have one question for you. What is now your amazing, brilliant plan to ensure affordable energy prices for people in Europe? Because I'm sorry, Ms. von der Leyen has been talking about we are doing this right. No, it's not enough. We are destroying us, importing oil from the east. It doesn't work because Zelensky doesn't want to repair the pipeline. He doesn't want to pay anyone to repair it. You have prohibited importing oil from that region, and now we cannot even get it from the Middle East. So the result is that in France, in Germany, other countries, they are paying more than €2 per liter. Companies are going bankrupt. People are leaving. People are fed up with these high energy prices. So please stop banning things and banning imports. Enable energy security and let people import and produce things so that it's the cheapest possible for people. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Panayottou is not here, so let's move on to Mr. Haji Pantala, please.
Dear Chair, Madam Minister, Ms. Commissioner, dear colleagues, Cyprus knows war. For the past 52 years, we have been living with the consequences of the illegal Turkish invasion. And still we are suffering. A third of our country is under occupation. The operation against the Iran regime has also come to our country. Cyprus remains safe due to the immediate solidarity of the European Union. I would like to thank from the bottom of my heart Greece, France, Italy, the Netherlands, Spain, and the other friendly countries. Greek fighter jets, the European frigates, and the counter-missile batteries are protecting our country. We now see that we are not alone. It's not a slogan anymore. It is something we can see, in fact, these past few days. Our family is by our side, and we are grateful. Also, Madam Chair, we would like to thank you for your clear words. The security of Cyprus is the security of the EU. This solidarity in action leads us into a new era. And, of course, our goal always remains a fair solution for the Cyprus issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Annunziata now, please. Colleagues, never in my long working life have I so often heard the word diplomacy as I have during recent weeks. Mrs. von der Leyen herself said that we need to do everything possible to de-escalate and stop this conflict. But what's the proposal? How are we actually going to de-escalate? We haven't been told. Let's also we talk about democracy. I mean, we hear people talking about war and democracy all the time. And the President, again, referred to the conflict as one of unintended consequences. So perhaps, I mean, hasn't this war been carried out in violation of international law? We haven't got an answer to that question either. Now, yesterday was the worst day of the conflict so far. Iran sent missiles over the entire region, and at the same time, Israel crossed the traditional space in the south of Lebanon dedicated to Hezbollah and started to attack the center of the country for the first time since I can remember. Europe has also constantly been under attack, Cyprus and also Turkey. And nevertheless, we don't hear anything in terms of information about this. We don't know anything. If there was a time for diplomacy, I think it's long gone. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Wilimski now, please.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we should be happy that the days of the Mullah regime are coming to an end. They're counted. 35,000 dead people in the first couple of months of this year. These are people who in Iran stood up for freedom and wanted a decent future, and they were slaughtered away by this regime. Do not forget that Iran has been threatening the region, and don't forget that Iran is seen as a terrorist hub for terrorist activities in Europe. I'm an active politician in favor of peace, but I do understand what Trump and Netanyahu have said. We cannot continue to watch these people massacre and slaughter their people. And Europe, well, what are we supposed to be doing? Just sitting back and watching the petrol prices go up rather than negotiate? Or we should be trying to manage this so that energy prices are affordable for people. We have to make sure that the Iranians have a decent future. Very often we see that people are going to be invited. Well, what about Reza Pahlavi? Maybe could be invited to hear what a future would be for Iran. And I think these are the kind of things we should be accompanying. That would be our task. Thank you.
Onorevole Weimers.
Mr. Weimers, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Today, Sweden woke up to yet another Iranian assassination plot on European soil. The regime has ordered the murder of Swedish-Iranian expert and Reza Pahlavi supporter Arvin Khoshnood through its terrorist proxies in the Foxtrot criminal network, right on our own soil. This is something that the Sweden Democrats warned about for years. When you open the door to mass uncontrolled migration and failed integration, Islamist regimes exploit our street gangs to spread terror, attack our citizens, and threaten our national security. Enough is enough. The EU has to wake up. We need to expel Iranian diplomats from Europe. We need to close regime-funded mosques, such as the Imam Ali Islamic Center outside Stockholm. We need to follow Australia's strong example with crushing sanctions. The time when Islamists treat Europe as their own playground must be over once and for all. Thank you.
Grazie, onorevole Montserrat.
Thank you, Mrs. Montserrat now, please.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you very much, President. The 11th of March is the anniversary of one of the West jihadist attacks in Spain, so I'd like to take a moment to remember the victims. They remain in our hearts. The totalitarian regime of Iran is violence and death. They kill women for not wearing the veil. They kill students who are protesting in favor of freedom. A factory of terrorists, Hamas, Hezbollah, and the regime itself promoting hate and violence across its borders. We saw that in Madrid. They tried to kill a former member of this parliament, Alejo Vidal-Quadras, because he was defending the freedom of the Iranian people. As a Democrat and as Spaniard, I feel shame and embarrassment that Hamas and the regime is publicly thanking our Prime Minister, Mr. Sanchez, for his support. This is a man, a leader without scruples, who is using a war for his political survival. He lies. He says no to war, but he sent a ship to protect the Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier without the approval of Parliament. He apologized in private to the US. And you have Irache, who is manipulating the words of Ursula von der Leyen. We should never renounce our democratic European principles. The Spanish socialists should be talking about how they're going to help Spanish families make ends meet at the end of the month with the increase in costs, because you are simply there to ruin families. Thank you.
Sorry, we have a... No, blue card. I am sorry. Next speaker, Honorable Bayada.
Our people are also victims of war. We must prepare for what is yet to come, effects on instability of energy prices, of economic uncertainty, on the supply chain of food, and all this on the backs of European families who have already been through a lot during the pandemic, a war in Europe, and other conflicts in the Middle East. But what are we doing as Europe to make sure that there is stability for the person who will see everything go up in the supermarket, the family who will have to pay higher electricity bills, and to that young person who will have to pay higher rent prices due to an inflation that is yet to come? The Maltese government has had and is still intervening with subsidies to protect families and businesses. These are not capricious measures, as the Commission likes to portray them, but are measures of social responsibility. And even more now, the Union must support and give flexibility to Member States so that they can help people without hindrance. This is the responsibility of us all. This is a Europe that listens. This is a Europe that acts. This is a Europe of the people and for the people. A Europe of peace. Thank you.
Mrs. Strack-Zimmerman now, please.
Frau Vorsitzende, meine Damen und Herren.
President, ladies and gentlemen, well, yes, we stand on the side of the people of Iran, but let's look at Ukraine as well. Are we hearing anything from Mr. Putin? I mean, what's going on in the Middle East is being used as an opportunity to carry out further attacks on Ukraine. Iran supported Russia with the Shahed drone. They let Hamas attack Israel, and that led to the terrible consequences we saw in Gaza. It was Iran that constantly got Hezbollah to attack Israel, etc. And it was Iran that pushed the Houthis to block shipping in the Red Sea. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not only the Straits of Hormuz, it's an entire system which causes problems for us in Europe. Ladies and gentlemen, Europe needs to open up its capital markets, support free trade to a greater extent, and work harder to crank up the economy. And ladies and gentlemen, we need a defence union based on Article 24(7, the collective defence clause. We need to talk about that, particularly given the attacks on Cyprus. We see what could happen. We need to speak with one voice, because otherwise we can't play a role in the global order, which is dominated by the US, China and Russia. Ladies and gentlemen, that also means that governments such as that in Hungary of Orban need to be dealt with if they don't defend our values. It's not great to hear, but that's the reality. If we want to survive in this new world order, we really need to work hard and do something. I want Europe to play our role, and it's our role to ensure that that happens.
For you, sorry, we have a blue card for you. Mr. Mularcic from ECR. I am sorry, okay. Next speaker, Honorable Newman, please.
Mrs. Neumann, please.
You guys done with the shouting? Thank you. Dear colleagues, the people in Iran did not choose this war. The regime did. Yet they are the ones paying the highest price, trapped between missiles from above and repression from within. Trump and Netanyahu are gambling with the lives of 90 million Iranians and with the future of an entire region. How are we supposed to endorse a war when the goal is unclear and the strategy changes by the hour? A war in which desalination plants and historical sites are considered legitimate targets. A war in which the death of 150 school children is not even worth an apology. The Islamic regime chose this war, and the regime should be its sole target. This regime will fall. It is politically, economically, and morally bankrupt. The only question is when, and how many will it drag into the abyss before it does, in Iran and across the region. So to those still supporting this machinery of repression and death, choose Iran over ideology. Defect and end this madness. Dear colleagues, this is not our war, but its consequences are already ours to deal with. So Europe must engage in close coordination with partners in the Gulf, in support of Iranian civil society and the diaspora, to stop escalation and prepare for a day after. Our union was built on the ashes of the most brutal war in human history. It is proof that freedom and peace are possible. The people in the region deserve nothing less. For freedom, baroye azadi.
Thank you. Next speaker, Honorable Ioriu, prego.
Κυρία Πρόεδρε, κυρία... Dear Chair, Ms. Rauna, we're seeing Mr. Trump out of control and Mr. Netanyahu, who is officially a war criminal. They have opened the gates of hell in the Middle East and for the peoples of Europe as well. We're not talking about democracy. Democracy does not exist in Iran, but it does not exist in the other Gulf countries as well. So democracy cannot be enforced by bombs. Let's be honest. It's all about the oil. So the consequences for the peoples will be huge. Loss of life, about which Ms. von der Leyen is very selective. Very high prices and refugee flows. So we need to give some space to diplomacy and peace, respect international law. We recognize the EU solidarity in Cyprus, but that was not done through the EU. It was done by single countries. So, and Turkey is still there. You need to stand up.
Thank you, Mr. Salini now, please.
Grazie, Presidente.
Thank you, President. Well, in what's left of international law, it's already difficult to agree on the concept of legitimate defence. So you can imagine how difficult it is to agree on the concept of preventive war, which was the reason given for the attack on Iran. I do, however, think that it's actually not that useful for individual heads of state and government express their individual views, which are more moral than political with regard to what's going at the international level. However, it does seem to me to be more useful for European authorities to try and get over their own problem, which is that they don't really have an overarching single remit in terms of defence and foreign policy. We really need to try and get over the deficiencies in the treaties and try and build a position, a common position, because it's not really all about our individual statements from individual heads of state and government. Our strength is in the unity of the peoples of Europe. And this goes for economic policy, which is why we have to review some of the pillars of European energy policy, because some of the asymmetries there are causing us massive economic and social problems. And then also in terms of deterrence, we need to talk about common deterrence when we talk about defence policy. Thank you. Mr. Salini, Mr. Panayotou has a blue card for you. Will you accept it? Okay, please, Mr. Panayotou.
Panayotou? Yes, you can speak, please.
No, it's a mistake. I wanted to do catch the eye. Apologies.
Yeah. No, non voleva il catch the eye. Okay.
No.
Oh, it was for catch the eye. Okay. Well, there's actually another blue card for you, Mr. Salini. You're very popular today. Mr. Gratulis, please.
It's working or not?
I would like to ask you the following. Why doesn't the EU have a unique position concerning the conflict in Iran? We know that Iran is not a democratic country. It poses a nuclear threat to the whole world. So I would be in favor of a stronger European position.
Well, yes, I also believe that the EU should take a firm position. We need to stand up and call out the fact that Iran has for years been a violator of international law. But I do appreciate the effort that the European Union is currently engaged in, which is to try and overcome the issues that are caused by the treaties and come up with a position that is at the very least coordinated. Thank you. Thank you very much. We move on with our speakers list. Now, Mr. Pizzula, please.
Colleagues, of course, I strongly condemn what the Iranian regime has done, but the attacks of Israel and the United States on Iran are a violation of international law. We will have long-term consequences even when Trump's administration has gone. This is a conflict of a new generation within a context of further weakened multilateral international order. Iran is an aggressive regime, violent and repressive towards its own peoples, but also towards its neighbors, actively supporting the Russian aggression against Ukraine. But about its future, only the Iranian people can decide, and Europe needs to speak with one voice and needs to
act instead of just observe. We need to respond effectively, especially when it comes to the economic consequences of such an escalation. Thank you.
We have war on our doorstep. There is an asymmetric war being waged by the mullahs with no concern for their neighbours. Some thought they could reap the dividends of peace without being involved in defence. France yesterday, as part of this blindness affecting Europe, war is catching up with us in Cyprus, in Lebanon, in Dubai. The Charles de Gaulle and other French military support has been deployed to support our allies. The soldiers are proof of the credibility of France's commitment, but it is also a warning when we see the limitations on our defensive capabilities that cannot always respond at any time. It's true for France, and it is also true for other countries in the EU. That is why we must reaffirm our shared commitment once again to growing our national defense capabilities. That is absolutely vital for our continent. That should be part of our strategic compass. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Woutmans. Now, please.
Collega's, dit debat over de opvolging.
Dear colleagues, this debate on preparation of the EU Council is extremely important given the current situation. If we take a look at the attack of the US and Israel against Iran, it's increasing fuel prices, and Europe, ladies and gentlemen, must really think about our own citizens, and we have to show that we're supporting our citizens when it comes to them having to pay their bills. We shouldn't be thinking of new sources of energy, but new places to find energy, but look at our own self-sufficiency. I've spoken to businesses, and 85% of the replies to some of the questions that I have put to them, they say that European industrial policy has failed. And they also say that the internal market must be completed, internal barriers and obstacles have to be abolished, and we have to improve competitiveness. And they say, please make sure that energy prices come down, remain at a lower level. I know that in this debate on Iran, there are those who are saying that Europe should be a world actor, and we have to speak with a single voice in this situation. So we need a defense union, and we need a European army. That has to become a reality. We seem to be saying a lot about Trump, far too much, but I'd rather be talking about what is Europe going to do. And I think the time has come for Europe to wake up, but really wake up, and do things for our citizens. Ursula's always saying, long live Europe. I think I would say, long live a strong and reformed Europe.
Mr. Mulacic.
And who is
That.
No.
Okay. I am sorry. Next speaker is Onorevole Cunha.
Mr. Cunha, now, please. Thank you, President. The military escalation in the Middle East is a particularly dangerous moment in the international context. And given that, our priority should be clear, boosting mechanisms to prevent war. Diplomacy cannot not simply be a reaction to crises. It needs to be used as a tool to avoid crises. Europe needs to play a greater role in multilateral organizations and work harder to prevent conflict. We now need to prevent a further escalation of violence and create spaces where diplomatic conversations can be held. We also need to look at the consequences of this conflict. Firstly, the humanitarian dimension. We need to boost initiatives to provide protection and assistance to innocent civilians who are affected. And secondly, we need to look at potential migration flows. We need to avoid the situations that we've seen in the past, in which migrants were used to produce political pressure. And thirdly, we need to look at the energy impact. This crisis is showing us Europe's vulnerability and shows us that we absolutely need to build our energy sovereignty by ensuring a diversity of supply and more renewable energy. At this time of international uncertainty, Europe needs to show what distinguishes it, which is a fight for peace and international stability. Thank you.
Mr. Oliveira. No, thanks. Okay. I am sorry. Next speaker, Onorevole Repasi. Prego.
Sehr geehrte Frau Präsidentin, liebe
President, colleagues, the international rules-based order is the DNA of the EU. We are at the heart of our organization, an international rules-based system. And if we downplay that, we're weakening ourselves. The Iranian Mullah regime was abhorrent and had committed many crimes against international law. But that does not give anyone else a carte blanche to break rules themselves. Now, when we have those who call out this international rule breaking, they seem to be in the crosshairs, according to Trump, rather than those actually committing those crimes. So we have not seen solidarity in Europe. An attack on one is an attack on all of us. Europe must behave differently and act differently. We need to focus on respect of international law in these dark times. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bouchard de Villalba now, please.
Su mundo sombrío.
This is an empty, dark world, that of Mrs. von der Leyen, and it's crumbling. When she said put an end to the nuclear era, well, it was a plan to weaken us, and I think everybody should resign. All of you preferred to prepare us for defeat, and the order based on rules turned the other eye when Turkey invaded Cyprus, when the United Kingdom consolidated an illegitimate colony on Gibraltar and turned our country into a nest of terrorists attacking Christians. You have allowed mass immigration to encouraging people to have more children. And solidarity for families, you've preferred those over NGOs over those. Sanchez talks about sovereignty, and he's been trampling sovereignty right from the first day in Morocco, for example, by supporting an organisation there. And what about ETA as well? And with the agreement of the Partido Popular, they've managed to undermine our own energy industry, putting in the hands of foreign companies. And then prostitution and cocaine. Well, this will be judged by history.
For you from Mr. Gonzalez. Gonçalves. Sorry.
Muito obrigado, Sr. Deputado.
Thank you very much. Now, you are in the Patriots group. Your friends in Portugal from Chega say that the operation in Iran is a humanitarian operation. Now, Trump has previously said he wouldn't send a single young American to war, but now they're being killed. 47 have been injured and 7 have been killed. Now, children have been killed in a school in Iran. So if you're such a patriot, could you do a favour to all Europeans and all people across the world and stand by the side of peace?
Well, your friends today, your friends in Spain, the Antifa organisations, the separatists that have called for a boycott and violence against my political leader, Santiago Abascal. There is an election campaign. There's a small village called Treviño, and your colleagues have called for war, and that's for violence, and that's the war we want to end. That's where we want peace, this mass invasion to change our population so that they can win elections that otherwise they wouldn't win. So that's, I think, what is of concern to people.
So the next speaker, Onorevole Orlando.
Mr. Orlando now, please.
Sorry.
Signora Presidente, prosegue.
President, the autocratic colonial alliance between Netanyahu and Trump continues. They're violating all international law and they're showing contempt for UN agencies and the international courts. We've had the genocide of the Palestinian people and now we're seeing an attack on Iran, a land invasion of Lebanon as well, and that feeds into disorder across the world, and there are thousands of civilians who have fallen victim to these conflicts. We need to clearly say to the ambassadors of the US and Israel and call out this violation of international law. EU bases are being used by US troops for the purposes of this war. We need sanctions to prevent genocide and these illegal conflicts, and we also need to prevent this war spilling over into Europe. The European Commission needs to support the Iranian diaspora and the courageous Iranian people. We need to say that they need to democratically decide how they can rid themselves of this bloody and theocratic dictatorship. Thank you. So you have a blue card from Mr. Madison. Do you accept it? Thank you. Okay. So please put your headphones on so that you can hear the interpretation. We'll switch the timer on. Mr. Madison.
Please.
Jaa, aitäh. Ma siis räägin eesti keeles. Mul on 2 hästi lühikest küsimust.
Thank you. I will speak in Estonia. I have 2 short questions. You're talking about violations of international law, and I understand that do the mass murders in Iran that have happened, the tortures of women, is it only an internal domestic issue that shouldn't interest us? Or are we talking about infringements of international affairs or international law? Is it positive or negative that the Chinese and Russian axis will weaken if there will be no Shahed drones that will be exported in order to destroy new villages and kindergartens? Is it good or bad that they don't have this opportunity anymore to export those drones? Thank you.
È evidente che la sua domanda.
Well, clearly your question suggests a position that isn't my position. I think that international law should be fully implemented, also vis-à-vis the mullah regime in Iran. But applying international law is one thing, but it's quite another to act against the International Criminal Court, and then it's another again to carry out an illegal war. War is not a way of exporting democracy. You'll recall Korea, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq. We constantly see this crazy US idea to try and export democracy, which actually causes civilian victims all over the world. Thank you. Mr. Volgin now, please.
Днес е модерно да бъде оплакван основания на правила.
It is today to bemoan the end of the world order. People say that there is no more any international order. Well, there has never been any international order. After the Cold War, there was no rule-based order. It was always the United States who ruled the order of the day, on the pretext of fighting authoritarian regimes and exporting democracy while serving their own interests by introducing puppet governments. And only very foolish people can think that this is a rule-based order. Take what the United States did in Iraq 20 years ago, what they do now in Iran. At the time, Washington, in all of its hypocrisy, insisted that it was all democracy in Iraq. They do not use that language anymore today. They only need someone who would toe their line. Democracy is the last thing they're interested in. Either Trump or previous presidents, they never cared about it. All they care about is US supremacy.
Mr.
Mrs. Zofkana, please.
For many years we have dealt and voted for resolutions against Iranian oppressive regimes, and you all supported it. And just to those of you who are quoting wrongly Albert Camus, he said, "I believe in justice, but I will defend my mother before the justice." So the terrorism cannot be defended, especially the one that killed their youth in thousands for months, the youth that wanted to live in freedom and democracy. And the recent attacks carried out by Iran and Iran-backed Hezbollah once again show us why this regime represents a serious threat to regional and international security. For decades, the Iranian regime has oppressed its own people, violently suppressing protests and treating its citizens as enemies rather than partners in shaping their country's future. This repression at home goes hand in hand with destabilizing behavior abroad. Iran's continuing support for Hezbollah and other armed groups fuels tension and spreads instability in an already extremely fragile region marked by rising extremism and multiple overlapping conflicts. The attacks targeting bases in Cyprus and attacks directed at the territory of an EU member state are unacceptable. And just to end, fuel prices cannot be the reason that we should turn a blind eye on what is happening there. The terrorism should stop, and the menace for European citizens is greater than increase in the prices of fuel. And I welcome the proposal by Commission Presidents that Member States should consider their energy policy and the same way that the Croatian government has done, and to help their citizens to cope with this situation until we finally get down this terrible regime. Thank you.
Vi chiedo, colleghe e colleghi, rispetto dei tempi.
Colleagues, please stick to your speaking time. Mrs. Ince now.
International law is not optional. The rule of the jungle cannot rule. The actions of the United States and Israel are unlawful, and the region urgently needs de-escalation to prevent further suffering of innocent people, of innocent children. There is one person, however, that I do not shed a tear for, and that is Khamenei. His death may mark the beginning of a new chapter. For decades, Iran has been ruled through fear, repression, and violence, and the current regime's tentacles, through its proxies, have even spread fear onto European soil. But Iran is not only its regime. Iran is a country with Persians, Kurds, Baluchis, Azeris, Arabs, and many other communities, all of them who deserve the right to shape their future. The European Union must act with unity and courage. It should never take years to turn words into actions, as it did when it took over 3 years to label IRGC as a terrorist organization. That was shameful. We must now act forcefully with sanctions against this heinous regime to ensure that power ends up in the hands of the people. For Gina, Amini, and for all those who gave their lives for a dream that must finally become reality.
Thank you, thank you. Next speaker, onorevole Andrese.
Voorzitter, terwijl de Europese leiders over elkaar heen struikelden om nietszeggende verklaringen de wereld in te sturen.
When it comes to our political leaders, we see that the Iranian people are calling for freedom, but we have seen oppression of women in the Middle East and Europe. There is no bridge to build between the West and Islam. It's cowardice to say otherwise. The link is just apologizing for this, but we don't hear any criticism when it comes to these jihadi regimes and the Islamization of the continent. Thank you.
Gracias, Presidenta.
Thank you, President. Mrs. von der Leyen does not represent us, and she hasn't even stayed here so that we can say this face to face. she'll obviously have gone to take a phone call from her friend Trump. The United States and Israel are pulling us into an illegal war. This is outrageous, but not at all surprising. Ultimately, one carries out genocide, and the other uses the rule of might is right to dominate the world. But what is unforgivable is that Mrs. von der Leyen wants to push Europe behind them towards this world without rules, which looks down on international law. This world that is championed by Trump, Netanyahu and Putin, and now Mrs. von der Leyen. This is disgraceful. Her statements have shown that she does not represent the peaceful spirit of Europeans. And with her words, we see that she's undermining the values of the European Union. And here and now, we say, resign now. European citizens do not want to be complicit in another barbarity and are saying loud and clear, no to war, as has the Spanish government. And one question, even though you're not here, Mrs. von der Leyen, please answer my question. Whose side are you on? With an international rules-based order and European values, or those who want to put pay to peace?
From Cecilia Strada.
Perfetto.
Okay, do you accept? Please.
Sappiamo che in questi giorni.
We know that during recent days people have been fleeing the attacks, and we know that countries in the region are hosting millions of refugees. In Lebanon, well, Syrian refugees are fleeing Lebanon and trying to go back to Syria after the Israeli attacks in the south of the country. Now, I'm very concerned with the situation. Now, you deal with the rights of migrants and displaced people, so could you give us any information on that?
Thank you. Your question is very timely because right now, when the Commission is not preparing a proper humanitarian response, there is great responsibility here. The European Agency for Asylum has said that if only 10% of the Iranian population needed to flee, then we would be facing one of the largest flows of refugees in history. We're not talking about 2015, when there was a huge movement of refugees, but essentially we need a response like we had for Ukraine. Even though these people are not blonde with blue eyes, they still need to be cared for in a dignified way.
Thank you, Mr. Bogdan, now, please.
Excelențele voastre, nu avem ce discuta cu Teheranul.
Your Excellencies, we cannot hold discussions with Iran. Diplomacy, talks, all of that is in the past. Now in the Gulf, it's weapons that talk. I mean, what will we talk about anyway? We need to support the United States and Israel and shouldn't get blocked in semantics, as Brussels all too often does. The situation is changing very rapidly. Iran no longer has any allies. China and Russia are just looking on. There's no draft resolution in the UN Security Council to criticize the destruction of Iran's critical infrastructure, and I think that speaks clearly. China is withdrawing. It doesn't support the current regime. There are negotiations in Abu Dhabi and Riyadh with regard to oil, but Russia has called it force majeure. It's understood that the regime that supplied its drones has been decapitated, but nevertheless we're seeing lots of propaganda and fake news. Iranian sources are weakened, so what's Europe going to do? Are we going to sit here and wait for dialogue? Our only option is to join the US-UK coalition. We need to act rapidly without hesitating, as Brussels so often does. We have 3,000 citizens in the region and thousands of businesses that are active in the region. Terrorist cells that will be activated by Iran on European soil will cause us massive problems. They will lead to a nightmare. So we need to act by the side of the US and the UK. Otherwise, we have to accept the consequences of a regime that's going to bring terror to Europe, as it has done in the Gulf region. Thank you.
A lot of colleagues, but we can accept just one from Mr. Sense. No? Okay. Okay, next speaker, Onorevole Yalul, please.
Thank you, President. An illegal unilateral military intervention took place in Iran without a UN Security Council approval, violating Article 2 of UN Charter. In this Parliament, we have condemned Iran repression. We fought to include Revolutionary Guard in the EU terrorist list. It supports to Hezbollah and the violence against women. We rejected Iran attacks to the GCC countries. President von der Leyen could have made the same. It is possible for her to condemn attacks and interventions without abandoning international law. While she remained silent, she erased the memory of 165 schoolgirls that were killed, 9 Israeli persons killed, and 83 kids in Lebanon that they were murdered. While she avoid taking a position, Netanyahu government, I will not confuse them with the Israelis, is not respecting Lebanon territorial integrity. He is displacing 400,000 people, and I want to blame here Hezbollah for that too. And he also is annexionating the West Bank. While you keep empty statements, our citizens say not to war, we want peace. President Pedro Sanchez is the one who understands this and represents all of that, who wants all of that, and those in this European Union that want peace, security, and stability. Because don't forget that we had millions of people here that were killed after 45. We give ourselves the right to have this European Union and international law that we need to defend, because we don't want more killing here. We are destroying the system. We are destroying the international system.
Sorry, we have a blue card for you. No? Yes? From Mr. Stee.
Gracias, Presidenta. Yo estoy de acuerdo que hay que ser prudente en esta.
Thank you, President. Well, I agree that we need to be prudent in this situation. We can't give a blank check to the US or Israel. But would you be a bit more cautious in saying that you can't act internationally without a UN Security Council mandate? Because I remember Javier Solana, a socialist Spaniard, who was Secretary General of NATO and militarily intervened to save the lives of Albanians in Kosovo without a UN Security Council mandate.
Me dudo mucho que el señor Solana, que es una persona muy...
Well, Mr. Solana is someone who is very prudent. I know him, and I don't think he would be validating a unilateral action against Article 2 of the Charter of the United Nations. I think either we support international law or we stop believing in the EU as a system. It's only because after 1945 we built this system because we didn't want to see this type of thing happen again on our continent. Thank you.
Replicare, prego.
Do you want to come back, Mr. Steele, please?
Gracias, simplemente para constatar que...
Thank you. Well, I'd just like to note that the NATO mission, while Javier Solana was Secretary General, did not have the approval of the UN Security Council. It was done for humanitarian reasons, and I think it was the right thing to do, but I just wanted to note that so that it appears in the minutes.
Ni Pedro Sánchez lo es.
I am not Javier Solana, nor is Pedro Sanchez. We have seen what happened in past wars. In Iraq, for example, that we were against, where we had thousands of people killed. We saw what happened after the invasion of Iraq, about the terrorist groups that came out of it, and about the dangers that were posed to us. Thank you.
Prego.
Mr. Borchia now, please. Colleagues, I must confess that for a few minutes this morning I was tempted to change jobs because I heard President von der Leyen saying that we're travelling along the right path here. Deindustrialisation, massive high energy costs, a lack of competitiveness, people who can't make it to the end of the month, but we have heard that we're on the right path. Trump phoning Moscow rather than Brussels. Brussels at the bottom of the class when it comes to competitiveness and GDP, and we're hearing that we're on the right path. In the Patriots and in the League, we need to change jobs because we're not going to follow von der Leyen in helping her destroy the people of Europe. Now, Mr. Ghiardi, please.
Exactly 1 month ago, from this
very microphone, I was warning that the developments will reach Europe. Unfortunately, I was confirmed, and Mr. Costa said that we are going to be impacted. We need to be proactive and not reactive. We have seen that it is not only Ukraine, but Cyprus as well in the Eastern Mediterranean that needs to be defended. EU solidarity and defense needs to become reality. We cannot only rely on bilateral relations. At the same time, we have the usual suspects that are trying to profit from this crisis. Turkey, through its state bank, Halk Bank, was helping Iran, has now deployed 6 F-16 fighter jets on the occupied territories in Cyprus in order to protect But protected from whom? The Tsams in Hezbollah and Iran. How long can Europe undermine itself?
Next speaker, Willy Sondal.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to speak in Danish. Israel har angrebet.
The United States and Israel have attacked Iran and removed the top of the priest regime who have killed thousands of their own citizens and caused terror in the Middle East. This war reminds us that there is a new world order where international law does not apply and Trump can do whatever he wants and only respects their own power. And there seems to be no clear plan for the future. The war has spread already through the Middle East into Lebanon, with many displaced people and many people killed. I have been a critic of Bush's illegal war in Iraq for years, and I'm also against the brutal regime in Iran. We've seen it again and again. Bombing is simply not enough. International organizations, rules, and standards are necessary in order to protect us against endless wars in the future. These are prerequisites for peace. Thank you.
Opatka, please.
Dear colleagues, never forget this. The Mullah regime in Iran, which is still in power, is a terror regime. UN sources reported in January they killed more than 35,000 of their own people. Iran funds terrorist groups like Hamas, Hezbollah, or the Houthis. Iran arms Russia with drones. And Iran was close to becoming a nuclear power. And we should not forget, Iran has in its constitution the destruction of Israel. And on the other side, we have the UN Charter, which purposes, how I see it, to protect human life, but not to shield regimes that slaughter their own people. When the Security Council is paralyzed by vetoes coming from Russia, a strict formalist reading of the Charter betrays its own spirit. Therefore, Israel and the United States were legitimate to start this operation.
Colleague Lepatka, thank you. But would you like to accept a blue card from Jungblut, Alexander 613? Yes, please.
Vielen Dank, Herr Kollege, dass Sie die Frage zulassen.
Yes, thank you for allowing this question. I think it's become quite clear during the debate that the left are preparing arguments for us on the basis of NGOs, that there are going to be these mass flows, these mass movements, and that a lot of people could be streaming to Europe. We know, of course, that this has negative consequences for the people of Europe. So I'd like to ask you from the EPP what you think about this. Would you go along with this, or would you make sure that Europe is turned into a fortress?
Gerade das Richtige.
Well, Europe is doing the right thing, I would say. We have beefed up our attitudes, and the Commission has found support in Parliament, and I think we're now going in the right direction. We're working to prevent illegal migration, and we're also doing everything possible to put an end to, as we're seeing, to the regime in Iran. Thank you.
Floor is yours.
Domnule vicepreședinte, stimați colegi, mă adresez...
Vice President, dear colleagues, I am speaking to you on behalf of millions of Romanians who are experiencing an increase in energy prices, and they are worried that they won't be able to pay their bills. The conflict in the Middle East is already present in Europeans' lives, and they expect the EU to protect them. Energy is not just an economic sector. When it becomes too expensive, an industry loses its competitiveness. It impacts farmers, our security, and our resilience suffers. I would ask the Council and Commission to come with a coordinated proposal to stabilise the energy market and to protect our buying power. We need to use our reserves. We need to use support mechanisms, alternative mechanisms. We need to tackle speculation. These are all different options that could be rapidly adopted. Accessible energy means protecting our citizens and the European economy. Thank you.
Floor is yours.
Thank you for giving me the floor. The conflict that has just broken out isn't something new, but Iranian regime is the only one to blame. They support terrorism all over the world. They support Hezbollah, Houthis, Hamas, and it terrorizes the whole region. Nobody else is to blame. If we're talking about international law and that it should be observed, yes, it should be observed. But how to proceed vis-à-vis a regime that doesn't respect international law at all and always ignore it and terrorize its own population? What can we do? We say that we're based on international law. That's true. But what did we do to prevent this conflict? We didn't do anything at all, only sanctions, but they had no impact at all. If we want a statement from the Commission, and if the Commission is to speak about it, let's speak clearly. Let's call a spade a spade. We know the situation. But if people like Kaja Kallas will be saying something like, Israel has the right to defend itself, but then it seems like I'm not a racist, but it says nothing, but it's simply terrible.
Jan Ruijsen, floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, President. Dear colleagues, the military intervention by the US and Israel in Iran deserves our support. I think we have to realize that diplomacy has failed and that intervention was inevitable. All you have to do is consider the murderous actions of the regime against its own people, look at the development of their nuclear program, or their support for terrorist organizations in the region. So obviously this has to be stopped. But stopping a regime militarily and doing away with the threat is one thing. This can be achieved fairly easily in the short term, but much more difficult but equally necessary is to topple the regime. Not an easy task, but this is something that must happen. And it is up to us, therefore, to support the opposition in Iran and to work together with them and to support them fully. The Iranian people have to be able to count on us and our support.
You have a blue card from Mr. Jonsky, but you are also on the KGI list, and we are in a time strain. What do you choose, blue card or KGI?
Blue card.
Blue card, please. Would you accept, Bertian? Thank you. Jonsky, you have a floor.
Bardzo dziękuję.
Yes, thank you very much, President. Can I go ahead? Thank you. Today we're talking about security and the war on the eastern borders, the war in the Middle East, and then we know, of course, that missiles launched by Iran have hit a base on Cyprus. And we're talking about this here in the hemicycle, but amongst us, there are politicians who are then saying that we should not be signing up to SAFE as part of our security. So what do you think about that? How would you persuade people that the money from this program is necessary?
Floor is yours.
U noemt het SAFE-programma, dan hebben we het natuurlijk ook over versterking van onze eigen defensie, het investeren in onze defensie.
Well, the SAFE program relates to investing in defence, so it's absolutely necessary. But at the same time, in Europe, there are many question marks over SAFE and its structure. I mean, for example, it needs to be funded through joint loans. Well, that's a pretty dangerous choice because the investments that we make now will then be based on money that has to be paid back by future generations. So yes to investment in defence, but there are major questions as to how SAFE is funded. Thank you.
Chers collègues, de quel droit Vladimir...
Colleagues, what right does Vladimir Putin have to make war in Ukraine? He has no right. And that's why we support Ukraine. What right does the Iranian regime have to attack other countries, bombard other countries, support terrorism, desire the destruction of Israel? What right does it have to build a nuclear program, etc.? I mean, it has no right to do that, so therefore the regime must fall. What right does Donald Trump have to launch a war against Iran? Obviously, he has no right to do that, and that's why no European country should follow him or has followed him in what he's doing. We've learnt the lessons from 2003. In this context, I would say that international law is not something that is outdated and should be got rid of. It's not because Vladimir Putin, Ayatollah Khamenei, or Donald Trump are trampling international law that we should abandon it. So I have a question for Mrs. von der Leyen. What right does she believe she has to speak out against the maintenance of a rule-based international order? What is her remit? What is her mandate to do that? What right does she have to talk about foreign policy when she calls on international heads of state and government to act? On whose behalf is she speaking? The speaker is cut off.
Next speaker, Ludek Niedermayer.
Thank you, Mr. President. On March 12th, tomorrow, Czech Republic will mark the 27th anniversary of joining the NATO. This was a huge step for Czech Republic on the way to democratic Europe. Unfortunately, many Europeans have understood NATO membership as an umbrella under which someone else looks after our security and defense. This was a big mistake, big mistake that have got us into current very difficult situation. We cannot change the past, but we are making the future. It's not enough if the member states will adjust properly, increase the defense expenditures. There is a clear role for our joint Europe to be played. First of all, the Article 42.7 on collective defense clause in the European treaties must be real. And we must make sure that this is a credible commitment of the member states to help each other. On the top of that, we should build part of our defense together. It's more effective, cheaper, and it will deliver quickly. This is the way to our more secure and safe future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Elio Di Rupo. Floor is yours.
Dear Commissioner, I'd like to speak to you about competitiveness. The competitiveness of Europe, I mean, the old methods, we use deregulation, acting on salaries, blind faith in free trade. None of this works anymore. Even Mario Draghi has spoken out against this. Europe needs a real industrial strategy to get relocalization of industry in Europe, as Joe Biden did in the United States by putting $200 billion at play. We need to massively invest in strategic sectors: technology, artificial intelligence, R&D, defense, food, medicines, renewable energies. Competitiveness should also improve the social conditions of European citizens by putting in place quality jobs, decent salaries, good purchasing power. All of this needs to be done by promoting made in Europe products, but also not closing ourselves off to the rest of the world. Thank you.
Speaker Alexander Sell.
Die Amerikaner greifen den Iran an und an deutschen Tankstellen.
The US has attacked Iran, and we're seeing petrol prices increase in Germany. Petrol now costs over €2 a litre, but much of that price is in taxes. Citizens pay and the government takes in money. But actually, so most of these petrol prices are the result of taxes. So it's Merz and von der Leyen who are benefiting, not oil producers. Your policies, the Green Deal, etc., have made Germany poor. Europe no longer plays a role in the world. Taiwan, the Middle East, whatever. No one's interested in what von der Leyen has to say. You have destroyed our continent with your disastrous green policies and your open borders. If we want to see Europe play a role in the world again, we need to stop shooting ourselves in the foot. CO2 prices must be got rid of. Sanctions need to be levied, and we really need to move back to reality. Thank you.
We have the threat of all-out war with the US-Israel attack against Iran and Lebanon. They are talking about the protection of women. These are just excuses when they have close allies like Saudi Arabia, the Taliban, and the Syrian jihadists. The real reason is the US-China competition, and the bourgeoisie in Greece also wants a piece of the action. And the government of New Democracy was quick in protecting the British bases in Cyprus and even Bulgaria. Of course, it's not compassion for the Cypriot people after 52 years of occupation. The US, British, NATO military bases were supposed to safeguard the Cypriot people, but they themselves now have to be supported even by the so-called pacifist Spain, because they are used for the war and are a target. So Greece should get out of this war. We should shut down these bases. The people should not pay, and we need to put a limit on prices.
Finished 6 rounds, so I have 2 rounds left. There is no more blue cards approved, and to give more time for KGI, even if we will not be able to do, I think, for anybody who is registered for KGI. So, next speaker, Thomas Tobin.
Thank you, President, colleagues. The developments in the Middle East remind us of one simple truth. Europe cannot afford to be weak in an unstable world. And let us also be clear. The people of Iran deserve freedom, dignity, democracy, not the tyranny of the Ayatollahs. This is yet another wake-up call for Europe. We must strengthen our defense capabilities so that Europe is prepared for modern threats, including drone attacks like the one that targeted the airbase in Cyprus. Secondly, we need to reinforce our internal security, regain control of our external borders. We need to protect ourselves from Russian hybrid attacks and the proxy networks of the Iranian regime. Thirdly, we need major investments in energy, not only renewables, but also nuclear, because energy is fundamental to our security. And finally, we must secure a competitive Europe, now and for future generations. A strong economy is essential in these times of uncertainty. Now is the time for the EU leaders to double down on defense and security, simplification and continued support for Ukraine. This is how we will keep our union and citizens safe.
Thank you. Next speaker, Marta Temidu.
Obrigada, Presidente.
Thank you, President. the Iranian theocracy has, for a long time, been the epitome of a brutal dictatorship. Therefore, we stand firmly by the side of the Iranian people in their courageous calls for a democratic transition that they fully deserve. We also stand for an international order based on rules that we should all defend. We reject the idea of might makes right. We reject the US and Israeli attacks on Iran and the Iranian retaliations against Israel and the Gulf states, as well as Israeli attacks on Lebanon. It's always civilians who pay the price of violations of international law. The girls from the school in Minat, for example. But there's another price to pay for this war. We're aware that war has already started to be felt in Europe. There's been an increase in fuel prices, and there is also the risk of an increase in terrorism and migration flows. And above all, there's an increase in fear. This overshadows the lives of Israelis and Americans, and this is a fear that we don't want to see return to Europe. Thank you.
Thank you. The European Union felt that all problems could be solved on the basis of one regulation or another, but not this one. Mrs. von der Leyen, we've heard that your resignation is necessary. But anyway, we've got the climate policy, we've got ETS, and the European Commission is proposing more centralisation, more administrative muzzling in member states. And what we would like to say is that if we take a look at the conflict in the Middle East, if it goes on, Europe is going to be defenceless in the face of increasing fuel prices. Nobody, councillors, nobody's listening to us. You seem to be just giving free loans to Ukraine and this agreement with Mercosur. You're losing out to China, to the United States, and there's no innovation, no investment. And the only remedy that you're putting forward is parity of governments. The whole project is crumbling, and it's Mrs. von der Leyen who's the gravedigger.
Deputy Minister, commissaris, voorzitter, collega's. Het debat gaat...
Minister, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the debate on the situation in the Middle East is taking place, but I think the contribution from the EU is quite limited. We see the price increases of oil and gas because it's dependent on sources in the Middle East. Yesterday, the President of the Commission gave a mea culpa and said it was a mistake to stop using nuclear energy. We had warned her, and unfortunately we have lost precious time. So now we need to take energy policy into our own hands. Just with renewable energy, it's not going to be enough. We also depend on partner, China, which has a significant portion of the solar panel market and about 80% of wind turbines as well as quite a lot of rare earth materials. We need to be careful not to lose our strategic independence. Thank you.
Okay.
The civilians in Iran experienced a hellish situation under the murderous Iranian regime, but they're suffering again now because of the war. All of this must come to an end. We see these bombs falling, and it's not unrelated to oil. Iran controls a fifth of the world's oil. In every crisis, it's the same thing. Being dependent on fossil fuels makes us vulnerable. So to Ulf Kristersson, how can you talk about Sweden improving its defense capacities, but you're still dependent on oil, and there are subsidies to these fossil fuels that make us even more dependent, and it makes Sweden weaker. Security is not going to be achieved through more fossil fuels. Security and safety will be achieved through renewable energies. Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, President. Well, suddenly the left has discovered a great passion for the defence of international law. And it's happened since the war in Iran has started. But who is talking about the rights of the Iranian citizens who are being killed by a regime which is now struggling to survive? This Iranian theocracy has tortured demonstrators and killed children just to maintain itself in power. Mr. Sanchez talks about international law, and he criticizes the US on that basis. But did Mr. Sanchez criticize the Hezbollah and Iranian militias, those militias that have caused death and destruction? They even organized a civil war in Lebanon so that they could impose themselves everywhere. Has Mr. Sanchez and the socialist government in Spain criticized the Houthis, those who have done their best to prevent all these countries in the Middle East region, to prevent them from becoming democratic? Ladies and gentlemen, a few years ago, Mahsa Amini was murdered, and there was this women life freedom movement, and we wanted to do something, but the left did everything they could to stop us. What we need to do is respect truth, and the fact is that the Iranian people can't free themselves. They need our help to free themselves. The people of Yemen and Lebanon, and also the people of Israel, and even Palestinian civilians need Iran to be free so that then they can be free in their turn. That's what Europe should be working towards. Thank you.
Chers collègues. Dear colleagues, the illegal war that has been launched in Iran by the United States and Israel is out of control and is plunging the Middle East into chaos. The Mullah regime is one of the worst that exists, but you cannot provide justice for the 30,000 Iranians and women that fell victim to the bullets just by attacking. Because what Israel is doing and the United States, they're not only destroying military infrastructures, but oil infrastructure, desalination plants, which are essential. This mass bombing has created a huge environmental and health crisis with very many victims. And then there are the Lebanese in the south of Lebanon who are also suffering. And we've seen that there's a threat that this will turn into a new Gaza. Russia benefits because they can sell their oil at higher prices, and this is an instrument turned against us. So please, Mrs. von der Leyen, wake up. It's not up to the European citizens to pay the price for this disregard of international law, and try and do something about our oil and gas independence, support the Ukrainian people, and the speaker is interrupted.
Thank you, micro switched off. Yeah. Next speaker, Bart Groothuis.
Chair, dear Commissioner, Minister, in the past 24 hours, the Islamic regime has put mines in the Strait of Hormuz. Oil, gas and electricity prices will spike even higher for our citizens and for our industry. And Europe has about 100 mine sweepers and mine hunters. The United States owns only 4. Our navies have practiced for such a scenario for decades. So do what needs to be done to secure freedom of movement and freedom of navigation. But a military mission will not suffice to get ships sailing. Insurance companies should issue insurances for transport, and they are not. So Europe should take 3 steps. First, establish an EU shipping risk pool where insurances continue to be provided. Companies as a standard coverage, and the EU will act as a public backstop for extreme losses. And secondly, deploy naval escorts to ensure the physical security of crews and vessels. And thirdly, let the markets know that Europe stands behind continued navigation by providing clear coordination with ship powers, insurance and energy companies. Whether you think this is Europe's war or not, its consequences are, so deal with a strategic reality. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker, Jussi Saramo.
Mr. Chair, Trump's war increases the cost of transportation and heating homes at a time when many Europeans are already suffering the consequences of Putin's war. Those who oppose the green transition are impoverishing Europe. Putin is grateful when oil money flows into his war chest. The most horrific situation is, of course, for the Iranians, whom we must find more ways to help. They are being killed from within by their own criminal leaders and from without by criminal states. The fascist regime in Iran must be treated as criminals, just as we have already decided with the IRGC. Bombing schools and hospitals, however, will not help Iranians. The goal of Israel and US is not free Iran. We have seen elsewhere how these two kill innocents without any restraints. I am ashamed of European leaders who do not renounce violations of international law. It is time to defend justice and humanity.
Thank you. The next speaker, Nicolas Pascual de la Parte.
Thank you very much. No a la guerra. Por supuesto, no a la guerra.
No to war, of course, but we must be resounding when we say no to religious dictatorships or medieval eras which clamp down on the Iranian people, no to executions of dissidents and political opponents, more than 1,000 in 2025. We mustn't massacre peaceful protesters who have been struck down by the Revolutionary Guard, many in January and February. You cannot torture young people until they die just because they won't wear the veil. We cannot export terrorism throughout the Middle East to America and the Middle East. No to this terrible regime having nuclear weapons. No. We must say loud and clear that no to the war, but we must not have empty words either. We must have protection of human rights of the Iranian people, particularly women and children. We must have security and safety for the Iranian people. The speaker is interrupted.
Very much so. I have to be fair to everybody. Your micro is switched off. Next speaker.
Már most látszik, hogy az iráni háború fő következménye ugyanaz, mint az.
Thank you. We are starting to see now the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war and the US-Israel-Iran war. This has led to a massive jump in fuel prices, and everybody seems to have an interest in keeping those prices high. So we've seen the initial response underpinned by panic. Ursula von der Leyen admitted that it was a mistake to do away with nuclear power. In her own country, cooling towers were destroyed. Ridiculous. So, given the enormous mistakes we've made here in Europe, or that the European Commission has made here in Europe, what can we expect in other parts of the world? So, for example, those people who forced Europe to manage without imports of energy from the East, tell us, how should we solve our problem? Norway is at maximum capacity. The United States is selling its oil at enormously high prices. There's no solution. So we have to completely re-examine the situation. Moreover, Ukraine is blocking oil deliveries to Europe. We should simply not permit Ukraine to do this. And the president of Ukraine is calling about sanctions on the president of Hungary, of even sending troops. This is not something we can accept. We should now start paying greater heed to what the member states want.
Dear President, Iranians protesting all over the world are pro-Israel, pro-USA, pro-Ukraine, anti-Russia, anti-China, anti-Hamas. Where does the EU stand? Sanctions Israel, middle finger to the USA, monitors Ukraine, buys Russian gas, ships factories to China, funds Hamas through UNRWA. Europe needs some serious self-reflection. Only a few get foreign policy right, but Persians do. They risk their lives for democracy and stand with the USA and Israel against dictators and terrorists. The moment the regime was hit, left-wing pacifists screamed for immediate de-escalation and resumption of diplomatic processes. Sound familiar? Straight from Russia's foreign ministry. If you think the real problem is the strikes against tyranny rather than the tyranny itself, I'm sorry, not even a
Thank you very
psychologist.
much. Sorry, it's micro switch off. Sorry. Next speaker, Siegbert Frank Drosen.
Verehrte Kollegen, Israel und die USA mögen.
Israel and the US may have their reasons, but this is an attack. And there were negotiations on nuclear weapons. So are we going to apply the same standards as we do with Ukraine? If we were doing that, then we would be talking about sanctions. Of course, Iran is not a friend of the West. And Khomeini managed to reach power with our support. Now, if you look at the Middle East, it's sinking into chaos. And what are Kallas and von der Leyen doing? They're fighting over powers. They should be protecting us from a wave of refugees or doing more. And Chancellor Merz is throwing his European partners under the bus. Where is the EU? Instead, we need a new start. Sovereign nations with a strong internal market where we seize opportunities in this multipolar world.
Further? You can do it quickly, please. Shared could be...
Yes, Mr. President, thank you very much. In accordance with Rule 10, the members of this House have to respect the dignity of Parliament. Mr. Dröse just called this Parliament a sham Parliament, which is an insult to the dignity of this House. The same insult was already perpetrated last plenary session by a member of his very own party, by a member of his very own group. We can no longer tolerate that members of this House denounce this as a sham
point. We
parliament.
will check the language because I was listening to the interpretation. Thank you. Next speaker, Wouter Beke.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Commissioner, Presidency, this debate is about the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. However, I'd like to talk more about the impact of this on Europe and the Europeans. What have we seen recently? Rocketing oil and petrol prices. We've also seen attacks on Cyprus, for example, and perhaps this will be followed by a wave of migration. Last month, we were debating about the problems which our industry is facing. The problem industry faces have not decreased. They've actually increased considerably because of high rising energy prices. So, Commissioner, we have to bite the bullet. We have to bring energy prices down to help our businesses. At the same time, however, we also have to push to enhance our security. I heard the head of the Commission talking this morning, and she said to Cypriots, your security is our security. This will only be possible if we actually ensure that Article 42, paragraph 7 are properly implemented. Now is the time to do it.
President, the situation in the Middle East is yet another example of an erosion in the international order. We are noticing a serious escalation that risks to grow into a full-scale war. No doubt the regime of Iran has a destabilizing role in the region. It is a threat to the international security, and it is responsible for serious repressions against its people. Hardly anyone believes that military action will lead to democracy and stability in Iran. We've got a sufficient number of examples, Iraq, Afghanistan, etc., responding to a breach in the international order by war only deepens the instability, because the message of this war to the authoritarian regimes is that it is not diplomacy and compromise, but armament that is the only guarantee and security under the new geopolitical realities. Europe has to have a voice of its own. It should have a voice in protection of international law and diplomacy. We should not get involved in this U.S. conflict. Madam von der Leyen, you need to be more courageous.
Next speaker, Fidias Panayotou.
The European Union doesn't care anymore about international law. As most EU leaders have failed to condemn the attacks of Israel and United States against Iran. We can't defend international law only when it benefits us, like it happens in the war in Ukraine. But we need to be critical when our allies violate it on a regular basis. Even if EU leaders don't care about morals, at least they should care about European citizens, because they are the ones that are going to pay the consequences of this illegal war. An energy crisis will hit every single European household. And on top of this, EU citizens in my country, Cyprus, fear for their lives because Iran could keep retaliating with more drone attacks. I truly believe that it's both possible to be against the authoritarian regime in Iran and at the same time against the illegal military actions by our allies. So please, colleagues, let's speak up and clearly say no to war. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Colleagues, we have a catch the eye procedure. I have a very long list, and I think I will not be able to give to everybody. I will keep a balance according to criteria as much as possible, political, geographical, and so on. First speaker will be on catch the eye, Michal Sherba.
The Iranian regime is evil. They collaborate with Putin. There is no doubt about it. We are living at the time between war and peace, and we cannot be weak. Europe must build security and security of our skies, invest in military mobility. And also we need unity. Our American ally has other priorities. We cannot allow the world to forget about Ukraine. We should focus on our mutual security. Orban and others in Poland, for example, undermine the SAFE instrument. We cannot stop as Europe.
Thank you. Next speaker, Kostas Mavridis.
Thank you, President. Due to the war in Iran, there was an attack against the British military bases in Cyprus, and that made Cyprus a target as well. Thanks to the swift aerial and naval response of Greece, France, Italy, Spain, Holland, and others, Cyprus is fully protected. Fully protected. Reacting to this European solidarity, the Erdogan regime transferred 6 F-16 fighter jets to the northern occupied part of Cyprus, which is an EU territory. Today, we heard no single word about this from Madam von der Leyen. Nothing. Nothing about this new anti-European behavior of Turkey that blocks the EU energy projects in Eastern Mediterranean and continues to occupy EU territory in Cyprus. Sooner or later, Madam von der Leyen will go, but we as Europe, we would have to face the feeding of the Turkish monster.
Thank you. Next speaker, Silvia Sardone.
There is a people who has been crying for freedom for years, and instead of supporting people who criticise the regime, the European Parliament has wasted time criticising Donald Trump. Young people have never lived in freedom. Their protests were met with bullets, with detentions. In Iran, women are subjugated. They are killed because they're wearing their veil wrongly. the European Union is doing too little to fight the Iranian regime. The regime that, once it was cornered, decided to change their flag. They removed a lion and included signs of Islam and Allah. Today, I want to make it very clear what the real symbol of Iran is. It's not the flag of the Ayatollahs. Anybody showing this flag is...
Please do what according is the rules. Thank you. Next speaker, Oihane Agrigatoi Martinez.
So, several messages have been sent out to Mr. von der Leyen. Nobody wants to allow ourselves to be taken over by the law of the jungle, and violence leads to more violence, as we've seen in my own country. And the people win from this is the Iranian regime. They are constantly or repeatedly torturing prisoners. Moreover, Donald Trump has also been opening the way for other authoritarian regimes. The European Union, meanwhile, stands on the sidelines. If we want to bring an influence to bear around this new table of democratic values, we have to demand more respect. We have to have a more ambitious global approach. And what we can't accept is the same people always pay the price. The international order and rules based on sovereignty. I hope that you'll be doing everything you can with your team to ensure that we do the utmost to ensure that human rights be upheld, together with international law, democracy, and democratic values. That's what we require as a strategic international power.
Thank you. Friday night, the first bombs fell on Iran. The Ayatollah was killed and we held our breath. What happens next? What will we do? Then President von der Leyen announced the EU will discuss this on Monday. 2 weeks later, we still haven't really found our course of action. Spain wants to go left, Germany wants to go right. And while we bicker about if this was a breach of international law, spoiler, it is, the result is a standstill. Because we don't have one foreign policy, we are bystanders. United action looks like this: a naval mission to free the Strait of Hormuz from mines and protect oil and trade shippings, bringing European citizens back safely from the Middle East together, collectively push the US to be clear on the goal of this war and act in line with international law. Divided, we will always remain reactive bystanders. But acting as the United States of Europe can lead us through any global crisis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Irene Montero.
Thank you very much, President. Ladies and gentlemen, you and von der Leyen want Europe to be part of an illegal war led by the US and Israel. Of course, you don't want your own kids to go to the war. Well, if you want a war, then you should go. But keep our sons and daughters at home. Who is Ms. von der Leyen speaking on behalf of? She's speaking on her own behalf, not on mine. Given the situation in Palestine, this woman should be judged or tried as a war criminal. Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, these are wars for oil, for power, and it is putting us in danger so that Trump can create a luxury resort on the ruins of Gaza so that his kids can make money investing in oil 2 days before bombing Iran. Ladies and gentlemen, while we're in NATO, whether we want to or not, we are complicit in these illegal wars. We need to act now. We need to control food, energy and transport prices. We need to make no to war a reality. Socialists, liberals, Greens who have voted for her, let's isolate her. Let's get out of NATO. I don't know what we're waiting for.
It was a warning which could be checked about according to the rules, colleague. Next speaker, Lucas Zipper.
Since the very first day of this conflict, people want me to pick sides. People want me to pick sides as a politician between an Islamist terror regime and war criminals that are corrupt and transform their state into authoritarianism. I refuse to pick sides because the only people that I care about in this is the civilians that suffer. And you can choose which side kills more or kills worse these civilians. What I can tell you from all of this is that we need to transform Europe to play a real role in the future. We need a European army. We need a common foreign policy. We need to be able to get our own citizens out of such a situation. Only if we make ourselves ready, then we can really weather the storms of geopolitics. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Nikolina Brnjac. Sorry.
The meeting of the European Council comes at the moment when Europe needs to make a decision on its competitiveness, security and future investments. Europe today can no longer look at security and competitiveness as two separate policies. It's especially important when we talk about the new MFF. As an rapporteur, I think that the new MFF needs to support innovations, technological developments, and dual-use technologies. It's not just a matter of investment, it's a matter of competitiveness. Today, we invest 2.2% of BDP investment and development, and USA 3.5%, and China is investing a lot too. So Europe needs to support its innovative technological base, because we cannot have secure Europe without investments.
Speaker Daniel Attard.
Thank you. Let us stop pretending that this crisis appeared out of nowhere. For decades, the Iranian regime has imprisoned its citizens, brutally crushed protesters, and exported instability elsewhere in the region. That is the reality we are dealing with. But we should also stop pretending that bombs will magically deliver freedom. History teaches us a very, very simple lesson. Missiles can kill dictators, but they will not build democracy. The future of Iran will not be decided in Washington, Tel Aviv, or Brussels. It will be decided by the Iranian people themselves, by the women, the students, and the young generation that continues to courageously demand freedom and dignity despite the brutal repression. Europe, therefore, has a responsibility. First of all, protect our citizens, push for the escalation, and also stand firmly with the Iranian people in their long struggle for freedom and dignity. Because if Europe continues to be a spectator, then we should stop pretending to be a geopolitical actor. Strategic autonomy means shaping events, not simply reacting to them. And finally, missiles will not decide the future of Iran. The Iranian people will. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Barry Andrews.
Thank you, President and colleagues. Here are 10 ways in which the United States has undermined international law in the last 12 months. 1, rolling out the red carpet for war criminal Putin in Alaska. 2, endless support for Netanyahu's war crimes. 3, withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement. 4, withdrawal from the WHO and UNHRC. 5, the closure of USAID. 6, the illegal global tariffs. 7, sanctions on the International Criminal Court. 8, illegal attacks on Venezuela, Nigeria, Yemen, Syria, Iraq and Somalia. 9, threatened the sovereignty of Greenland. And 10, this illegal attack on Iran. So we have 3 more years of this. And what are we going to do? If we try to beat this by being this, they win and we lose. So I call on President von der Leyen to choose the EU, to choose the rule of law, to choose the EU with all of its weaknesses. The United States is taking a break from political seriousness. We have to have the confidence on our values reflected in international law.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, Maria Grappini.
Domnule președinte, domnule comisar, într-un minut am ales.
Commissioner, colleagues, 1 minute. And I want to talk about competitiveness because this is related to the agenda. But how can we increase competitiveness with the new budget? What is the Parliament's response? And what is the European Court of Auditors saying? The budgetary proposal doesn't respond to our needs. At the current time, we don't have enough money in order to pay for research. How can we have investment? Citizens can't even pay their bills. They can't pay for their medication because there is so much bureaucracy. We need to move towards action And nothing can be more important than a competitive economy in this global context. And we need to have security and safety. That is what is expected of us. We need to provide a response. Are we going to continue with this budget that we don't want?
We need to know what you think about the F-16s in northern Cyprus. You haven't said anything about that. We've been spilling European blood in order to serve the Peace of Westphalia. We need legal equality between nations. What of all of this is still being observed in Ukraine, Gaza, Syria, Lebanon, and Iran, even Greenland or Panama, Canada, and Cuba? They're all worthy of safety and democracy. Trump's America and Israel, with their war criminal President or Prime Minister Netanyahu, should face justice, and you are siding with them. That's what you're guilty of, Ms von der Leyen. Member states of the EU have to defend international law.
Fortunately, the last speaker on the KGI will be Juan Fernando López Aguilar. We don't have a time more. Thank you.
Thank you, President. Comisión. El orden internacional.
Commissioner, the international rules-based order and the rules which accompany it date back to the Second World War. That was based on the clear slogan, never again. But never again surely can't suggest that tyranny is never possible anywhere in the world. Never again means that war isn't the response with all the enormous human, economic and material costs it brings with it. International law, international rights are the fountainhead of the European Union and of our foreign policy. Nobody here in the European Parliament can ignore or turn a blind eye to the brutality of the Ayatollahs. At the same time, we support the brave resistance, the heroic young people in the country who've been resisting and the dying. At the same time, however, we shouldn't fail to take critical eye at ourselves while criticising those carrying out this illegal war. We have to ensure that protection be provided for people who are threatened, particularly given that those leading this war have not got an exit ramp.
In KGI procedure, and I would like to ask to take a floor for the Commission. Commissioner Šefčovič, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, Madam Minister, honourable members. Let me react, please, on the most recurrent topics of today's debate. Clearly, nobody here regrets Khamenei's downfall, and we all hope that this moment can open a path towards a free Iran. We all wish Iranian people freedom, dignity and right to decide their own future. We also agree that European international credential stems from our proud history, from the fact that the EU was founded and today still is a peace project. There should be no doubt about our unwavering commitment to the pursuit of peace, to the principles of the UN Charter and to international law. And we will always uphold these principles and values. But let's be honest that despite our clear commitment, international consensus on respect of this principle is not there anymore. The world has become a rough place. International relations transactional, and only way for Europe is to invest a lot and work hard for our independence. Key of our success, on top of hard work of our citizens, is European unity and a clear European solidarity. And I would like to thank Minister Rauna for highlighting how important it was and how important it is for Cyprus. And it is and always will be part and parcel of the European Union, as it was in the case of Denmark, Greenland, and as it is in the case of Spain. Let me conclude on the important topic of energy prices. I would like to reassure all of you that every single meeting of leaders in the EU, or as it is case today on the G7 level, and I'm sure that it will be the case for the next European Council meeting, will deal with energy and energy prices. We fully understand the pressure faced by our households and companies because of these high energy bills. There is a clear determination to deliver now. Therefore, we will comprehensively look at how we can reduce the price of energy, and we will do it from all aspects and through all components of price: cost of commodity, grid charges, taxes and levies, as well as carbon costs, including modernization of ETS. If you allow me, Mr. President, to use my last words today for issuing an appeal for our unity and solidarity, European and interinstitutional one. We can further forge unity and strengthen solidarity through dialogue, healthy debate, to avoid polarization, which can be dangerous, especially in the time of crisis. When Europe is united, we do great things. That's the spirit we need right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Now I would like to ask to take the floor for the Council, Minister Raona. The floor is yours.
President, honourable members, Commissioner, thank you for this very important exchange and for your remarks, which will be duly conveyed to the President of the European Council. Let me also reiterate once again my sincere appreciation for the solidarity expressed by so many of you during this debate. Such solidarity demonstrates our collective strength that stems from unity among member states and amongst institutions. The security of Cyprus and the security of any member state is the security of the entire Union. And the security of Cyprus and the people of Cyprus is within the Union and the Union alone. Let me be clear. The EU has always and will continue to stand with the legitimate aspirations of the Iranian people, of Iranian women, for a future in which their human rights and fundamental freedoms are respected and protected, their right to determine their own future. Today's discussion has certainly highlighted the plethora and complexity of the challenges that Europe faces in an increasingly complex and rapidly evolving geopolitical and economic environment. A union that is able to bring together its principles and its interests, a predictable, reliable partner, always committed to international law. Honourable members, this is not the first time our union has faced adversity, and each and every time Europe has stepped up. Time and again, we have chosen cooperation over fragmentation, solidarity and outwardness over isolation. And this is the path we are choosing once again, to stand together and defend our interests. More integration, completing our single market, building a true energy and defense union, one that can protect its member states collectively when under attack. Now is the time for a strategically autonomous union. These priorities are reflected across the issues that leaders will address in March: strengthening competitiveness and unlocking the potential of our single market, addressing energy prices, alleviating the pressures faced by our households and our businesses, advancing work on European security and defence, ensuring that the Union's long-term budget supports our common ambitions in a balanced way, and remaining steadfast in our support to Ukraine while actively engaging with developments and with partners in the wider Middle East region. Addressing these interconnected challenges requires strengthening Europe's capacity to act independently while remaining engaged with those regional partners committed to stability, diplomacy, and multilateral cooperation. not those who try to take advantage of this moment to perpetuate their illegality. Our regional partners, the Gulf partners, despite being under attack, have stepped up and have shown to be reliable. We must continue to stand with them and enhance our partnership. In closing, let me reiterate that the Cyprus presidency's commitment to its institutional role is strong, working closely with member states, the European Parliament, the Commission, and our international partners to advance our common priorities. Rest assured that Cyprus knows resilience, and it is a presidency that in adverse circumstances will continue delivering with focus and determination. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister. So, colleagues, we are closing this point in agenda, and our sitting will resume in a few minutes with address by Nicola Pashinyan, Prime Minister of Armenia.